News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
The Prime Minister delays growth plans as the UK heads towards a recession.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 12th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
As you know, we're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio, online. So whatever you're up to today, take us with you. These are your top stories.
Well, Rishi Sunak has shelved a flagship policy that's meant to boost Britain's economy, prompting fears next week's autumn budget won't be enough to stimulate growth. Meanwhile, the Bank of England has also warned that the UK could be on course for the longest recession ever recorded.
Ukraine's president has announced the Russian army has been forced out of the southern city of Kherson in a historic moment for his forces. Cheering local crowds greeted victorious troops after Vladimir Putin suffered his biggest loss of the war so far.
And England take on hosts New Zealand in the Women's Rugby World Cup final. We'll have live updates throughout the programme this morning as the Red Roses try to bring home their third world title.
As ever, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Drop us a line, why don't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And we do promise that not all of the news this morning will be bad.
No.
A lot of it is, but we found a few nice things to cheer us up.
Few things that'll get you talking this morning, which is nice. Few sort of topics of heated debate.
Oh, there's an awful lot of that. But isn't it amazing about Kherson in the Ukraine that they've actually been able to put up the Ukrainian flag once again in that city?
I mean, that was an area that was annexed.
Yes.
So what does this mean for Putin? Does it mean he's going to fight back in ways that we don't want? Or it's going to be interesting to see anyway, but a victory in the meantime for Ukrainian forces.
And something else I want to be talking about throughout the programme today, I just find it fascinating. Angela Rayner, Deputy Shadow Prime Minister, if that's what you call her, Deputy leader of the Labour Party, has had a boob job. Not just recently, she had it a couple of years ago when she was 30, because she lost 6 stone in weight. And she said that after that, she just sort of needed to trim up her figure. And so she took out a bank loan to have a £6,000 boob job. And you can't blame her, can you, actually, I think?
Or can you?
I think it makes her very human. And a lot of people find her intensely irritating, Angela Rayner. An awful lot of people also think that she is a leading light.
Well,
but I just think she's human. And, and didn't she do well to lose 6 stone in weight? That's amazing. She did it with a personal trainer, going out and running it off, literally, apparently.
But anyway, let us know what you think about, well, that sort of cosmetic surgery, really. Is it something that people should just do and not worry about?
And have you been through that journey of losing an awful lot of weight and then wanting to sort of congratulate yourself in some way?
Not with boob job.
Oh, I think a lot of women would, well, not you, but a lot of women might see that. Oh, I don't know. I mean, when men lose a lot of weight, they sometimes need boob job of a different sort, don't they?
Sort of get pecs put in and things, don't
or they get just a lot of skin and flab removed. And it's important. It's not, I don't think, trivial. I think it's quite important. If you've ever been on that sort of journey, do let us know your story, please. And also, we're going to be talking about care homes.
Yes.
And the fact that the government is now promising that they are going to do something about the fact, and I think a lot of people will be shocked, although you may be going for it yourself, that care homes, many of them anyway, still have these astonishing rules about visitation, about the fact that you can't get in to visit your loved one.
Now, that seems very odd now that the worst of COVID is past us. Imagine there's still very vulnerable people in care homes. Maybe they're just being very cautious.
But surely they're very vulnerable from a mental health point of view, not being able to see their loved ones.
Well, that was the argument at the time, wasn't it? But if you're affected by that, if you've not been able to get in to see your loved one, get in touch. Tell us your story, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the Prime Minister is apparently set to delay his flagship growth policy of cutting taxes on business investments, adding to fears that next week's autumn statement won't do enough to stimulate the economy.
Yet Rishi Sunak is also preparing to cut defence spending in real terms.
And meanwhile, senior Tories are urging the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, not to go too far on tax rises in next week's autumn statement, because that could risk prolonging the predicted recession from the Bank of England.
Well, let's talk to the former chief economist at the Cabinet Office, Jonathan Portes, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. Look, what's your analysis of what's going on here? Because a lot of people seem to be saying, a lot of experts seem to be saying, actually, what Rishi Sunak and the Chancellor seem to be proposing for the autumn statement is actually well, certainly not a good strategy when we're heading into a very long, even if very shallow, recession.
Yes, well, they're confronting two conflicting pressures. One is that as a result of high inflation and rising interest rates, but also the catastrophe of the trustworthy mini-budget, they need to restore, at least over the medium term, a path back towards fiscal stability or fiscal sustainability. At the same time as the UK is, as you say, in the short term, facing the prospect of recession. That would have been quite difficult to do even without the turmoil of the last 6 months. It's now become extremely difficult to do. In my view, the UK clearly does need tax rises for fiscal sustainability because we need to finance a decent quality public services. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to do that all right away. And it certainly doesn't mean we need to cut public spending, which in my view would be, in general, quite the wrong thing to do for some of the reasons that you mean. What we need is a gradual program to restructure and reform the tax system so it shifts some of the, increases some of the tax burden, particularly on middle and upper income earners and people who've got a lot of wealth and property, but to do that in a way which actually helps rather than damages the economy.
It seems that almost every day there's a sort of leak or a suggestion, a rumour coming from government, and particularly Number 11, about what might be in store for us come the autumn statement. Are we being warmed up, softened up for really dismal news, or are we being drip-fed what actually might be better than we're dreading?
That's a very good question, and I don't know the answer. What I would say, though, is that I think it's a pretty bad way to make economic policy. This sort of continual program, continual, as you say, quite rightly, sort of drip of leaks. It reduces confidence. If you talk to people in business, they simply have no idea what the government thinks it's doing. Under previous governments, and I, of course, worked for governments of both parties for a long time, from the late 1980s to the 2000s, the Treasury and ministers in the Treasury didn't typically behave like this. They tried to be a bit more responsible and a bit more consistent. And I think, unfortunately, that we've seen a deterioration in the quality of policy making. As you say, it's very difficult to know what exactly to think. What of these leaks is accurate, and what of them is just trying to soften us up and maybe make our expectations so negative that reality turns out to be at least a little bit better. I'm sure there's some of that, but we won't know until next week.
No, but we shall find out before too long, won't we? Jonathan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though, isn't it? We're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? There's nothing else we can do.
But there is this feeling all the time. There's something not new every day, but there's just sort of. It's almost like they're trying us out. Are they sort of leaking information so that they're going to see what the public reaction is, or maybe the city reaction?
It's quite interesting though to see what's happening in terms of growth. This is meant to be growth is crucially important. That was the big push of the Truss administration, which obviously didn't work out. Growth is going to be difficult at the moment.
Yes.
So, but we shall just have to see. Do you agree with Jonathan that need to target middle and higher income earners? I think that the squeezed middle are probably squeezed enough, I would have thought, at the moment.
One thing that's being put forward that I found quite interesting as the driver of actually not an all-electric car, but a hybrid, is that they're thinking of changing the rule completely. At the moment, if you drive a hybrid or an electric car, in other words, a zero-emissions car, you don't have to pay anything more than about £10 in road tax.
Oh, don't you?
No. But they're thinking of changing that completely, so that drivers of electric cars will have to pay the same sort of road tax that you do if you drive an electric, if you drive a fuel car.
Well, quite right too, though. When you look at what road tax is for, why?
But it was seen as an incentive to go green.
To get one.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like the congestion charge in London. Has got nothing to do with congestion now.
No,
it's got everything to do with emissions. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, really, because if everyone's suddenly driving electric vehicles, well, London's going to get very congested again unless they start charging for it.
But what they're saying in this rumour, and it is just that at the moment, is that very clearly, if you can afford an electric car or a hybrid car at the moment, you can afford to pay road tax like everybody else.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they're targeting people just for that extra bit of money, and apparently it would raise quite a lot.
Yeah.
They're targeting people who, frankly, have got enough money to cope.
Yeah.
I don't know, if you're in that situation where you've just bought an electric car and you were incentivised to do so by the fact that you won't pay much tax, I don't know, how do you feel? You're going to be... How much do you pay in tax nowadays for a petrol car?
I don't know.
Flipping fortune.
I don't know. I try not...
It really adds to the...
Because it's weird, because I've just got a new car and it's... The first payment is a lot more than the following payments, which never used to be the case. So I'm a bit confused by all of that. But I had to pay like more than £1,000 for the first payment, but then every year afterwards it's several hundred.
I don't know, well, maybe you've got a thought on that as well. So there's plenty of things to have a talk about this Saturday morning.
Yes.
And also it's Remembrance Sunday, of course, tomorrow as well.
It is.
Think of that.
Yes, it is. We'll be doing lots on that tomorrow, and quite rightly so.
Actually, if you were out and about yesterday and you were at one of those little, like a village memorial or a town memorial or anything like that, and you were part of a poppy ceremony or you just took a picture, do send it in. I love that when you drive through villages and things, when you're going on a journey, drive through various villages, there's always that lovely place, the commemorative bit.
The little war memorial.
And they look lovely with the poppies
with
all
the
over
poppies
them.
on. But isn't it interesting? Every little village and town across the country with the poppies on, and that lest we forget, well, we don't forget, do we?
No.
And I think that's a wonderful thing.
So if you've got any nice pickies of anything that happened yesterday, poppy-wise, then do send it in, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today. At 12 minutes past 6, and the Chancellor's being urged to extend the 5p cut in fuel duty. It was set to remain in place until March of next year. The AA is pushing for the reduction to be extended amid the nightmare of higher costs for motorists. The AA says that with petrol now in the region of about 165p a litre, it's compared to 167.3p just before the fuel duty cut.
And residents in the Ukrainian city of Kherson have gathered in the streets to celebrate their armed forces after Putin's soldiers were ordered to retreat. Crowds have been seen cheering and chanting glory to Ukraine, with President Zelensky calling it an historic day. The withdrawal marked the third major Russian retreat of the war.
World leaders have scrapped the so-called family photo for the upcoming G20 summit. They refuse to be pictured alongside Vladimir Putin or his representatives after unanimously condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin has already confirmed he'll skip the meeting altogether to avoid confrontation.
And the Met Police Commissioner has warned public sector strikes could hinder crime fighting. Sir Mark Rowley says it's because of an overflow of work for officers. Speaking to The Telegraph, he also says only 22% of calls to the Met Police relate to crime.
What are the other calls about then? Are these calling up for a chat?
No, if they're crime, I suppose it's accidents, it's just wanting help.
I suppose it's, well, maybe that sort of thing, and maybe it depends what they're classing in that. Maybe it's journalists, to be fair. We do have to speak to the police a lot to find out what's going on, so maybe it's all our fault.
But 80-20, that seems a bit much, doesn't it?
It does seem a lot.
We'll find out more about that for you.
We will try.
Yes. Now, it's been a recurring topic of the past week. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has caused quite the controversy.
Yeah, from thousands of sackings to a financial cost for the elusive official checkmark, the blue tick, that means to you and me. Certain public figures like Amber Heard, she's quit the platform already. It's worth pointing out that Amber Heard is Elon Musk's ex, which I think puts it into some sort of context.
Interesting.
Isn't it? So, I mean, it's probably...
What's that about?
Less to do with the tick, more to do with...
And how many people really care that she's quit?
Oh, not many.
Apparently it's going to cause a flood of people quitting, but I'm not quite sure why. Are you blue-ticked?
No.
I was blue-ticked when
I was blue-ticked when I worked elsewhere.
But the blue
Can't
tick...
get blue-ticked now.
No, the blue tick is a sign that you are who you are. You're accredited, as it were, and that you're not somebody pretending to be somebody famous.
But that's all going out the window now, because anyone can get a blue tick.
Yeah,
they
pay for it.
They did try grey ticks for accreditation. They dropped it after a few hours.
Oh, well, there you go.
For some reason. But anyway, amidst all of this, Mr Musk has now raised the possibility of Twitter going bankrupt.
So what's going on?
Let's talk to technology journalist Will Guyatt, who joins us now. Morning to you, Will. What is going on?
Good morning to you both. I've got no idea what's going on, and
well,
not just because it's this early in. Well, just because it's this early in the morning. Overnight, Elon Musk has been having a row with the horror author Stephen King on Twitter. Stephen King says Twitter's not what it used to be before Elon Musk owned it. Elon Musk replied with a ghost emoji, and they've had a conversation. It's the weirdest, most wonderful place in the world now, Twitter. You've got the world's richest man, now the boss of that platform, seemingly willingly having arguments and conversations with anybody who mentions him in a tweet. It's just the strangest set of circumstances. You were talking about the blue tick verification. My understanding yesterday, and it could have changed overnight, they've completely decided to drop the whole blue tick verification thing and the paid for verification, because what was happening when people could start paying for their blue ticks, you had people pretending to be public figures, putting maybe having a fake name, but using a fake profile name, so that would be the @ whatever, but then perhaps calling themselves President George Bush and posting something really, really unsuitable for that person with a blue tick next to them. So he's really opened a whole can of, I suppose it's a whole can of worms. I think he's opened here. This is the problem. I don't think he knows what he's playing with. He's the world's richest man, and he thought he'd get his way, and he's not winning at the moment.
I can't understand why he thought it was so important, this blue tick business. I understand why people like Stephen King would like to have that blue tick, because then everybody can follow him. And, of course, when you're in the business of writing and selling books, it's important to have a big followership. But,
because
but why
And it's the only thing that he can monetize. It's the only thing people want. It's the only thing of value on that platform. People have long coveted the official mark or the verified mark or the blue tick. And he figured he could monetize it by charging people $8 a month. Even if he got several million people doing it, that's a new form of subscription revenue for Twitter that simply hasn't existed till this point. You've also got the other problem now. He's now upset most of the advertisers on the platform. Some of the world's biggest media agencies who represent lots of big advertisers have said, we're pausing Twitter campaigns until we can get our heads around what on earth is going on in this company, because it's making up policy on the fly. That's going to mean less revenue coming in through the door. Therefore, you get closer to Elon Musk, potentially saying, I don't want to fund this anymore, which sounds crazy when it's just 2 weeks after the world's richest man has bought this company. He's gutted it. He got rid of all the people he wanted to get rid of. More people left afterwards, people he wanted to keep at the company. They've gone to very, very senior people. And it's hard to know where you come back to from this, what happens next to this platform. I've followed it for social media for nearly 20 years, Twitter for 15 years. I've got really no idea where this is going.
I mean, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, he's talked about it going bust. Now, whether that's true or hype or what, I just don't know. But these tech companies, these social media companies, are struggling at the moment, aren't they?
There's a big change. There's a big change in the world in that both Apple have made it harder if you're using an Apple device to target adverts to people using those platforms. Meta, Facebook, used to rely purely on targeted adverts, and that's much harder for them to do now. And also, social media, there's an economic downturn on, so advertising is being cancelled. Advertising campaigns are being paused. People are considering where they're spending their money. And if Twitter becomes a riskier bet, people are just going to move away from it. And the other side of this, which is even more interesting, is the investors in Tesla, Elon Musk's other big company, don't like the fact that he's running Twitter. The share price of Tesla has slumped massively in the last week and a half. And Elon Musk himself had to sell $4 billion of extra Tesla shares just to pay the interest on the debt for Twitter that he's acquired. So there's a whole mess of stuff going on here. And he might be the world's richest man, but doesn't necessarily make him the world's greatest businessman right now.
And if a lot of people, ordinary users, if you like, famous people, authors, as I've mentioned, people who rely on Twitter to sort of spread the word, if they wanted to move elsewhere, where would they go?
Well, this is the big challenge at the moment. MIT, the educational establishment in the US, reckon about 1 million people have left since the announcement. It's very hard to get actual verified information, and the volume of people saying they're clearing off is clearly much greater than the actual number of people leaving. But there's a service called Mastodon, which is not a big elephant or a heavy metal group, depending on what you know. It's a decentralized social network. It's the idea that your data isn't stored on central servers. You are in control of your data. But it is almost impossible and unfathomable for an end user, not a techie like me, to understand how to set it up. That's one of the platforms that people have been going to, but there is nothing simple or easy which can get people's attention quite in the same way as Twitter has. That's the challenge.
Maybe we're all falling out of love with Twitter. Maybe this is the beginning of the end. These things never last forever.
Well, it's interesting to see what will happen if there is a downturn in social media, who will survive, what will come through. Mark Zuckerberg is betting the house on virtual reality, and the idea we'll all want to spend days wedded to virtual reality headsets rather than looking at a computer screen or a mobile screen. That's his vision of the future. But we haven't seen Elon Musk's vision of the future yet. He's just trying to monetize it and keep this site existing, essentially.
All right, Will, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. I'm going to have to say I'm all for getting rid of social media altogether. Because, I mean, it has its uses.
How can you say that when you're on it a lot?
I'm not on it a lot, though.
What are you on? You're always on something.
No, yeah, but I'm not. I mean, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but I don't post a great deal. And I don't look at what... I mean, I look at what you send. If you send stuff to my account, but I don't. You've got to be so, because it turns into such a vitriolic, horrible place.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I don't know. It seems to bring out the worst in a lot of people.
And I sort of think for young people, it's all right for us in a way because we can dive in and out when we want to. For a lot of young people, they are obsessed with it. It's how they live their lives.
Everything that's said on it matters to them, and that's where we've got it wrong slightly, I think.
And it's not healthy, I don't think. So, I mean, controversial as it may sound, I'd say scrap the lot.
Get rid of it. But that doesn't make any sense as to why he bought it then.
No.
Why buy something that you're going to run into the ground or allow to run into the ground?
Because he bought it and then pulled out and then went back to it again and...
Odd.
Now seems to be destroying it.
Do you care if Twitter folds? Do you care at all? Do you go on it very much? Do let us know.
Yeah, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We won't give you the Twitter address because what's the point?
Yes, exactly.
At GB News. Yeah. Anyway, we've got much more to come for you, including the Women's Rugby World Cup kicks off in 8 minutes. Let us know if you're excited by that. Drop us an email. First up, here's your weather.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. The weekend has started mild and it will continue that way. Not as windy out there today compared to the last couple of days, and there is some fog around, dense fog in a few spots too. This is the big picture, high pressure to the east, low to the west, and we're kind of in between with this weather front straddling across central areas, pushing northwards through the day, so a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern and central Scotland, but that rain is going to edge its way clear. There is some fog around that may take a few hours to clear, and for some it could just stay grey all day, particularly parts of northeast England and northern Scotland. But for most of us it is going to brighten up through the day and we'll see some spells of sunshine. Still a bit breezy in the west, but not as windy as yesterday. It is still very mild. With a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting up into the high teens perhaps, and even where it's grey, we'll see temperatures into the teens. This evening, it stays largely dry and fine, but it could turn quite misty again quite quickly, especially over central and eastern parts of England. Some dense patches of fog are possible that, again, could linger for much of Sunday. Still a bit breezy in the west, keeping skies a little clear here, and again, for most, it is going to be a very mild night, with most towns and cities staying in double digits. The details for Sunday, well, again, likely to start pretty drab, misty, murky, even foggy. That mist and fog will take a while to clear over eastern counties of England. Some will stay gloomy all day. Further west, a weather front will eventually bring some rain into the west of Northern Ireland, although I suspect Belfast will stay dry until dusk. Elsewhere tomorrow, most places, again, seeing some sunny spells, and it is going to be mild, even where it's cloudy, 13 or 14, with some sunshine. Temperatures, again, getting into the high teens. Could be quite foggy for Monday morning's commute, but we will see a change through next week, turning wet on Tuesday, turning less warm, but still around average.
This Sunday on Mark Dolan Tonight, my Mark Meets guest is one of the most colourful and controversial politicians in the country, former Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg. We'll get his views on the economy, on the nurses' strike, on Brexit, and our new PM Rishi Sunak. That's Jacob Rees-Mogg live on Mark Dolan Tonight, this Sunday from 9.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It is 6:27. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Good morning to you.
It's a huge night for women's rugby on the other side of the world as England take on New Zealand in the World Cup final. Following a sensational run of form that's left the Red Roses undefeated for 30 test matches, that is quite something, they now face their toughest opponents on their home turf in front of a sellout crowd. Our man in the Midlands, Will Hollis, has all the updates for us from Loughborough University, of course the home of Loughborough Lightning, where players are watching many of their teammates compete now on the world stage. Hi there, Will. It's an exciting morning.
Good morning. Yes, of course, it's a big night in New Zealand, but it's a very early morning here in Loughborough, where a whole bunch of Loughborough University students who also play in Loughborough Lightning, as well as in the university teams, are all here because some of their teammates are on the world stage right now, over in New Zealand at Eden Park, in front of a sellout crowd of 40,000 fans. Of course, it's one of the biggest rivalries in women's rugby, England, the Red Roses, versus New Zealand, the Black Ferns. It's obviously a big day. The last time England faced New Zealand in this way in a final for the World Cup, England did lose, but now they are the world number ones. Joining me now is James Gallagher. James, you're the rugby programme manager here at Loughborough. This is clearly a big day for the people on TV, but it's also a big day for the women here who are part of your teams.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic for the girls here to see some of their teammates, their close friends, just representing their country on such a big stage. I think the pride is palpable amongst all the players here, and for myself as well. We're really excited to cheer the girls on.
And then watching a Rugby World Cup in this way when England is doing so well, I think it's 30 games that they've gone unbeaten. Where is this England rugby team at right now, and how likely is it that they're going to beat New Zealand this morning?
I think today's going to be one of their toughest tests they've ever had, but the evidence is just there and of how good they are. They're truly fantastic. Some of these girls have never lost playing for their country, and that's fantastic, and long may that continue.
And then the scale of this, there are 40,000 people on that television who are watching this massive game of rugby, but it's New Zealand's home turf at Eden Park. Some people might say that New Zealand is the home of rugby because of the All Blacks and the tradition. It's such a part of their culture. What is the scale of this, but particularly for women's rugby and where the game is?
I think it's fantastic to see Eden Park with so many people there watching today, but I think even from the last World Cup, at that time we had a couple of teams here at Loughborough, and we've now got over 200 players playing, over 100 more coming to taste the sessions, and that's all just since the last World Cup. And events like today will just continue to grow the game even more, and encourage more and more young girls to watch their heroes today and pick up the game. And hopefully by the time the World Cup's here in England in a few years' time, there'll be even more girls here watching, or hopefully even at Twickenham Stadium watching their heroes lift the World Cup, hopefully, and retain it after today.
And there's about 20 or 30 girls who are here watching this game, and it's just about to start right now. This is obviously England rugby, but Loughborough Lightning, you are a top flight team in the Women's Premier League for rugby. Where is rugby right now at this local level at Loughborough University, but also in the Premier?
It's amazing. Like I said, we've got over 200 girls playing regularly here. Thousands more throughout the local area playing at a young age, and our season's about to start next week, and hopefully today a good win for England will inspire many of their teammates that are going to be playing for us in the next couple of weeks to get off to a cracking start. But everyone really can't wait for the season to really get going now.
Yeah, and everybody can't wait for this game to begin. It has actually just begun. James, thank you so much. Stick around. We aren't going anywhere, and neither are these ladies. They've actually, a lot of them, just got out of bed 5, 10, 20 minutes ago. They didn't pull an all-nighter, but I'm sure they're bright and wide awake now, Stephen and Anne.
OK, Will, thanks very much indeed. Good to see you. Interesting on the road tax issue, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of you getting in touch on this. Now, Keith, I think you're being a bit knee-jerk here. Keith says, I've just cancelled my order for an electric car after hearing the news about road tax.
It's not news, though. It's a rumour.
It's a rumour.
And like lots of things that are sort of coming out of Number 11 at the moment, rumours that that people who have bought or been incentivised to buy a hybrid or electric cars because the vehicle excise tax would be much less.
Straw that broke the camel's back, says Keith.
Are now going to be charged the full amount, same as a petrol or a diesel car.
But that, I mean, to be fair...
It's a bit premature, though, to think it's going to happen.
It's a bit premature, but it was always going to happen, Keith.
Yeah, it was.
You know, otherwise, because we're all going to go electric from 2030 onwards, if you buy a new vehicle. And so they weren't going to not have the revenue, were they? Nicola from Norwich says, I've always said that one day the government would implement road tax for electric cars. The motorist is one of their biggest cash cows.
Exactly.
So it's obvious that we're using the lack of road tax as a bribe to get us to ditch our diesel and petrol cars for electric. If you can afford an electric car, you can afford road tax.
Well, I think that's probably the government's thinking at the moment, is that they've got to raise the money from somewhere. So they're going to look around for easy targets or targets that maybe could afford it. There's a lot of confusion as to when you pay, how much road tax you do pay, even if you are driving a hybrid. It basically depends on the emissions rate and what you're emitting. So some cars will pay an awful lot less duty than others. But it's what we call road tax is vehicle excise duty.
Yes.
And you have to register and everything, and you have to prove your emissions and stuff like that.
But it's also, they've just cancelled on the congestion charge zone in London last year, or was it this year? I can't remember. But whereas you used to be exempt if you drove electric or
That's
hybrid.
right, I used to be.
And now,
Then they
hybrid,
changed.
you have to pay.
Pay the full same as anyone else.
So.
And I suppose you have to accept that incentivising people to go green, or get a greener car, if you like, is one thing, but sooner or later, they'll always catch up with you, won't they?
It's got to be done.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Oh, I should say, Alan says a much fairer way to charge the road fund licence would be to add it to the price of petrol and diesel. Then those that use the roads would be the ones paying for it. I can understand the thinking. I don't agree with it.
No, because it would put... I couldn't believe it when we read out a bit earlier that the petrol is now 134...
No.
Sorry,
165.
Yes, that's right.
Average.
Pence per litre. Litre.
I got it for 161 the other day.
Crumbs.
And it was just like, wow.
It shows how very seldom I fill up at
Yeah.
all. And it's a hybrid, you see. I don't do an awful lot of driving, but I don't fill up very often at all.
No, you've been for a shock next
Yeah,
time.
I will, won't I? Dave says, morning, please forget Angela Rayner's boob job. The Red Roses are lining up right now to compete against New Zealand to challenge for the World Cup. We need to wish them the best of luck in this challenge. And then Tony says, Angela Rayner is a breath of fresh air in Parliament, but she had a boob job. Is it our business? Not really.
No, not really, but she's given an interview about it, which is why... And it's worth talking about... I think it's worth talking about whether you think it's all right now. Have our views changed? If it's not just about... enhancing yourself for page 3 or whatever.
She says after having her children, her weight went up to 17 stone, which is a lot. And she then lost 6, and she just sort of gave herself a boob job. She took out a bank loan to do it. It was when she was 30, which is some 12 years ago. And she did it as a present to herself. And if it does that for your self-esteem, why not? I just think it's interesting. Makes her human.
Yeah, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere. We've got all the newspapers heading your way in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.38 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Should we take a quick look through today's front pages? And the Times leads with a very interesting story, I think. Care homes and hospitals. Visitors may get legal rights to visit their loved ones under new plans by the government. We're all astonished that some are still preventing visitors.
The Guardian says 15 senior civil servants at the Ministry of Justice were offered a way out due to Dominic Raab's alleged behaviour. That was before his reappointment.
The Daily Mail focuses on the Met's anti-terror chief, Matt Jukes, who is accused of going woke after wearing a menopause jacket.
Lots of words. The Eye says Rishi Sunak is delaying the growth plan as the UK heads into the longest recession.
And here in the Express, UK presence in France to stop crossings.
The Independent leads on President Zelensky calling on the liberation of Kherson, a historic day after withdrawal of Russian troops.
And The Telegraph leads with the Met Police warning public sector strikes will distract their fight against crime.
The Telegraph? No,
No,
the
it's
Mirror.
The Mirror.
There you go. I'm a celebrity. There you go.
Everybody's talking about Matt Hancock.
Yes, let's ditch all of that anyway and go through the papers with political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and anthropologist Mariana Hutter. Good morning.
Good
to
morning.
you both.
Morning.
Kevin, let's kick off with the Eye, should we? Looking at the growth plan.
Yeah, so big day on Thursday in the Commons. It's the autumn statement from Jeremy Hunt. And if you remember the mini-budget,
No.
if you remember that, way back in September, the plan then was to go for growth. It was all about economic growth, cutting taxes, borrowing lots of money to pump prime the economy to boost growth. Anyway, that all fell to bits. And now basically Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak are scrabbling around trying to find anything between 55 and 60 billion pounds to plug this financial black hole. However, it would appear that they're focusing on that rather than the whole economic growth stuff. Now, one of the things when he was Chancellor, Rishi Sunak wanted to do was to reform this thing called the annual investment allowance, which is like a tax relief to encourage businesses to invest in capital projects and that way boost the economy. Basically, because they're having to focus so much now on raising money that they can't, they're basically kicking into the long grass anything which involves cutting taxes because they need tax revenue. So on the one hand, you could say, well, fair enough, they have to balance the books, but looking at it, the bigger picture, long term.
The argument would be if they followed through on that procedure and taxes effectively get reduced for those businesses, that would generate more money and more income for the Treasury.
Well, exactly. But I think because they are so desperate to get money in now, that is a long-term thing that can be put off, they believe. But, you know, it's a balancing act, because if you go too far the other way, then you choke off growth, which, as we know, is already shrinking. We're on the verge of a recession. Then that could just make the current problems even worse. So potentially. So the Conservative MPs, I think, are very concerned about tax rises and what it could mean for the economy.
I don't think we should necessarily accept as a definitive fact that is not disputable this idea that we shouldn't borrow to get ourselves through. You know, the idea that you spend money on the rainy day. Well, if this isn't a rainy day where we're coming out of the pandemic, we're rebuilding a version of Britain around Brexit, there's the global shocks of the energy crisis, the war in Ukraine, the supply chain glitches from all the chaos of the last few years. This is the time that you probably do have to borrow against future prosperity, surely. I mean, not with a kind of blank cheque, but this idea that, well, we should make it all make sense now. Fundamentally, if that turns the screw so hard that people's quality of life is so badly impacted for the whole of their lives, like kids now are so negatively impacted, if they've got some degrees of disadvantage, it's just compounded upon compounded, and schools are struggling. You know, schools are working out whether to have a teacher or give the children food. And actually, if a teacher leaves, they're not going to replace them. I mean, that is a pretty...
It's a bit like taking the decision to build yourself out of a crisis, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And I mean, that's part of the reason why we're in this problem, though, is that in the mini-budget, Kwasi Kwarteng wanted to borrow £70 billion this year, extra between now and April, and the markets just went crazy. And that is the problem as well, is that because the markets were so spooked the last time, Jeremy Hunt, I think, needs to, as he sees it, go even further, basically to show that we're fiscally responsible. There's going to be no more unfunded tax cuts or borrowing, and we're going to raise money by cutting public spending and raising taxes. And
it's deficit. I mean, you say about borrowing, but you have got to tackle the deficit, haven't you?
It's all everything in moderation, if you know what I mean. This idea of, you don't want to be in a situation where you regularly spend more than you earn, of course, because not only do you undermine the economic stability of the country, you're also having to service that debt by paying the interest, and so, you're kind of throwing good money after bad. But to balance that out is when there's a big thing that you need to deal with, and money will help that and potentially help you invest in getting that growth and those returns in the long term, because you're keeping businesses afloat, you're encouraging investment into the UK, you're helping international corporations kind of who are looking at, well, where could we set up this new centre of operations? Should it be in Spain or in the UK or in South Korea? There's an incentive to come here. Now, I'm a big fan of tax. I think we should...
Oh, hooray!
Well, because I think we should think about it in a different way. We should think about it as a contribution to the services that we all require, because otherwise just go and live on a rock on your own and keep all your own money. But you won't have hospitals,
nice.
You won't have the police, you won't have cancer treatment.
No.
Because that's the stuff that we all have to pay into and you withdraw when you need to.
It's a fair point. With all of this, Kevin, isn't it fair to say, when you look at the strategy, A, we don't know what's in the autumn statement yet, but B, there's going to be a spring statement, because there always is.
Yeah.
So it might be a case of we need to sort of bite down hard now, and come March, maybe some of these things will get brought in.
Well, that is, I think, the aim. Based, I mean, from speaking to people in the Treasury this week, they sound almost shell-shocked at how much they need to raise. I mean, basically, as I say, 55 to 60 billion pounds of a black hole, and they're saying, well, basically what they're looking to do is cut public spending by 35 billion pounds on Thursday, and raise taxes by 25 billion. And they hope, as you say, that will get them over this hump, basically, and then into next year, things might be a bit better.
If Rishi Sunak wrote a cheque.
Oh, here we go.
Or personally.
A personal cheque, he could afford it, would hardly make a blip in his bank account.
He's not the richest person in the country. I mean...
No.
Fundamentally, Anne, I'm to some extent with you in that the people who can afford it need to pay more.
But they already pay an awful lot of money.
Not really.
Well, that's one of the things that they are definitely going to do.
Money makes money much quicker than working hard does. So if you've got loads of money, investments, wealth, stocks and shares, then you are seeing a return on that investment. If you've got some money, it makes more. If you haven't got any money and you're worried that if your washing machine breaks or your car breaks down...
Well, so it's not fair.
You're stuck. It's not fair, no. Yeah. And all those people who peddle that line, I've made it myself, I worked hard, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps and here I am, a millionaire. That isn't true.
But anyway,
true. No, because people get leg ups, people have networks, people have all that social capital.
Even if it is true, if you've got it, why not use it for the sake of the country as well?
Well, because
why keep it in a great big bank account?
Because I tell you what. See, I disagree with that fundamentally. Actually, and Rishi Sunak, you could write a cheque for 50 billion quid. I don't know how much he's got now.
I don't think he's got that much.
But if you wrote a cheque for 50 billion quid, that fills the deficit this year. Still got a £50 billion deficit.
Yeah, it's not a one-off payment. It's an annual. It certainly would help.
Let's go through all our billionaires then and get them to cough up.
Oh no!
And help the country out of this crisis. Why not?
I think that's really unfair.
Why should
someone being paid £500,000 as a bonus for whatever work they do haven't worked £500,000 harder than the person who cleans this office.
No,
it's a nurse who's doing an intensive care shift.
No,
right
it's totally different.
It's not. It's exactly the same.
Because you can't compare. They're not comparable jobs.
Fundamentally, they are because that's how we measure value. It's how much do you get paid? How much is your labour worth?
But your labour is worth more depending on how easy it is to fill that job, isn't it?
Not really.
Yes, of course it is.
Because
of course it is. If it's a difficult job to do or a unique job to do, you can call more money for it. If you're the only person in the country who can do that job, you can say, well, in that case, you can name your price, can't you?
Then I look forward to the time when, because we've got a massive shortage of carers, carers get paid properly.
A CEO could...
Except that won't happen because we don't value carers in the way that we value people in executive suites.
A CEO, if necessary, could do a carer's job.
But they don't.
But they don't. But a carer couldn't do a CEO's job.
I would challenge
some of them might do better.
CEOs can be a carer.
But I'm talking in general.
I think you're wrong, Stephen. I think it's how culturally we've decided what and who has value. And fundamentally, we are still living in a legacy where straight, white, able-bodied, rich men have the serious and important jobs, and because they're the serious and important jobs, they get paid lots, and that sustains a system which is fundamentally unfair and essentially morally bankrupt.
Oh. Let us know what you think. News at gbnews.uk. Talking of carers.
Oh, yes.
Marianne, in the Times, looking at... I can't believe some care homes are still not allowing visitors.
I was shocked by this as well. So this is news in the Times. Helen Whatley, who is the care minister, has said that some care homes and hospitals are still having really restrictive policies on visitors or kind of ongoing support, so from relatives. For example, things like only one visitor at a time. If there's the concern that someone in the whole setting has COVID-19, then no visits are allowed and they're stopped at very short notice. And this has a huge impact, not only on the families who are worried about their loved ones, but on people's sort of life outcome and their health as well. And there's also a concern that when relatives aren't going into care homes regularly, maybe standards are slipping, maybe people are spending a bit longer in bed, partly because they're understaffed, partly because they're under-resourced, but partly because no one will know.
It's sort of been allowed to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, and there's also the situation in hospitals as well. So in June, NHS leaders told the hospitals that they need to return to pre-pandemic policies on visiting and patients, whether patients can be accompanied in A&E, whether they can go to appointments, things like that. Because for a lot of people, that makes the difference between whether it's a positive, reassuring experience or whether it's absolutely terrifying, you've got no idea what's going on. So there's two suggestions for how this can sort of be quite quickly fixed, given that we have to turn the screw and make people do this. One is actually primary legislation, And the second is getting the Care Quality Commission, who do the kind of assessments, to include visiting practices in whether they determine whether
it should be part of the whole setup, shouldn't it?
It should be.
But I think it's terrible for people still suffering.
And if there's anyone watching at the moment and you've got a relative in a care home and you haven't been able to visit them, or you're having real problems visiting them, then do get in touch and let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Marianne, Kevin, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. 2 papers we got through.
Yes, they were big subjects.
Heated debate, though.
But we shall catch up with you a little bit later on.
Now, last year, a record number of 18-year-olds were awarded places at university, but apprenticeships are becoming increasingly popular with the chance to earn while you learn.
Now, in the West Midlands, one marketing company is investing in young people to create a more diverse digital sector that, thankfully, moves the thinking outside of London. Jack Carson went there to find out more.
From the Industrial Revolution to the digital one. Here inside the old custard factory in Digbeth, Birmingham, the And Academy is providing apprenticeship opportunities for young people to get into the creative sector. It's part of the And Partnership Marketing Network and M6 and Partners Content Agency, with the aim of increasing representation in the industry.
Agencies are only as good as serving the communities that they serve. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need a diverse group of people from all parts of the country and from all different backgrounds to be able to help us create the work that we do for our clients. Ideas come from all over, and the more diverse the group of people you are that you're working with, the greater the idea pool will be, and the better the work will be. And so, having people from all walks of life, from all different levels of education, background, resources, will give us better creative work.
But what are the stats for diversity in the industry? Individuals from Asian British backgrounds account for 7.9% of the employee base. For Black British backgrounds, it's 4.4%. Natalie believes this apprenticeship is changing that.
It's not just like where you're raised and brought up and that's where it stops and starts. It's kind of like, we're trying to get everyone involved, and it's not just because you live outside of London that you also don't get the opportunity to grow and advance in a great industry. We're all kind of a community, even though sometimes it feels like we're not. We kind of are a community, and if you see somebody doing something, it'll kind of engage the next generation or the next cohort to kind of be like, oh, maybe I should do that, and it's like local to me, and do you know what I mean? So I think, it's great.
Research conducted by the And Partnership found 46% of young people said they weren't informed about things such as apprenticeships as an alternative to university. For people like Cameron and Jeevan, this opportunity has given them a pathway into work.
Yeah, so I do envision myself for the next 5 to 6 years becoming a senior marketer. And I think because I know the position I was in, I want to kind of take an apprentice on myself. Because obviously I feel like a lot of young people now who've kind of gone through what I went through, it's sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty.
I'm a part of the Amazon e-commerce team with M6. So a lot of my stuff is working on advertising, on Amazon, sponsored adverts, stuff like that. It's been really, really cool and really exciting to learn about that. And then obviously we've been doing a lot of training as well with the apprenticeship, learning a hell of a lot of really interesting stuff about the marketing industry in a very new and engaging, very innovative way. So yeah, my day-to-day at the moment is a mixed bag of all kinds of stuff because we've already just started, but all stuff that gets you really pumped, I think, really excited.
Creative industries are worth £115.9 billion for the UK economy. In Greater Birmingham, it supports 50,000 jobs. Academies like this are investing in the region to show that you don't just have to be in London to work with some of the biggest companies. Jack Carson, GB News.
Well, getting stuff out of London is not a bad thing.
And I'm all for apprenticeships, right?
Yeah, actually.
I think there are a lot of people on degree courses at the moment who are just building up a big debt, and they don't really need to do it. They could do it
better off
way.
by the end of it.
Yeah.
No, I tend to agree. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Gosh, we found something we agree on this morning.
Oh, yes. Here's your weather.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. The weekend has started mild and it will continue that way. Not as windy out there today compared to the last couple of days, and there is some fog around, dense fog in a few spots too. This is the big picture, high pressure to the east, low to the west, and we're kind of in between with this weather front straddling across central areas. Pushing northwards through the day, so a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern and central Scotland, but that rain is going to edge its way clear. There is some fog around that may take a few hours to clear, and for some it could just stay grey all day, particularly parts of northeast England and northern Scotland. But for most of us, it is going to brighten up through the day, and we'll see some spells of sunshine. Still a bit breezy in the west, but not as windy as yesterday. It is still very mild. With a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting up into the high teens perhaps, and even where it's grey, we'll see temperatures into the teens. This evening, it stays largely dry and fine, but it could turn quite misty again quite quickly, especially over central and eastern parts of England. Some dense patches of fog are possible that, again, could linger for much of Sunday. Still a bit breezy in the west, keeping skies a little clear here, and again, for most, it is going to be a very mild night, with most towns and cities staying in double digits. The details for Sunday, well, again, likely to start pretty drab, misty, murky, even foggy. That mist and fog will take a while to clear over eastern counties of England. Some will stay gloomy all day. Further west, a weather front will eventually bring some rain into the west of Northern Ireland, although I suspect Belfast will stay dry until dusk. Elsewhere tomorrow, most places, again, seeing some sunny spells, and it is going to be mild, even where it's cloudy, 13 or 14, with some sunshine. Temperatures, again, getting into the high teens. Could be quite foggy for Monday morning's commutes, but we will see a change through next week, turning wet on Tuesday, turning less warm, but still around average.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
The Prime Minister delays growth plans as the UK heads towards a recession.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 12th of November.
I know, I can't believe we're there
Struggling,
already, can
actually.
you?
This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio, and online as well, of course. So wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister has apparently shelved a flagship policy meant to boost Britain's economy, prompting fears that next week's autumn budget won't be enough to stimulate growth. The Bank of England has warned the UK could be on course for the longest recession on record.
The president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, has announced the Russian army has been pushed out of the southern city of Kherson in a historic moment for his forces. Russia's defense ministry announced that they had been forced to withdraw more than 30,000 troops in Moscow's biggest setback of the war so far.
And England are well underway in the Women's World Cup final, a Rugby World Cup final against New Zealand. The game is hitting its stride. England currently winning 19-14, but they've had a player sent off. We'll bring you updates throughout the programme.
And as ever, you can join in any of our discussions, as you well know, by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So let's kick off with the news that the Prime Minister is apparently going to delay his flagship growth policy of cutting taxes on business investments, adding to fears that his autumn statement next week will not be enough to stimulate the economy.
He's also preparing to cut defence spending in real terms as inflation soars.
Meanwhile, senior Tories urging the Chancellor not to go too far on tax rises in the autumn statement, as it could risk prolonging the predicted recession that the Bank of England is talking about.
Well, for more on that, we're joined in the studio here now by GB News' political reporter, Catherine Forster. And a very good morning, I was going to say. I'm not terribly sure anymore whether it is a good morning, because every single day there seems to be a bit more rather grim news coming out. Not announcements, just sort of news of possible announcements.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? Every single day. And today, of course, we'll find out for sure on Thursday. But today, the news that Rishi Sunak's plans to grow the economy by giving companies big tax breaks for investment shelved, at least for now, possibly will come back in the spring. And this is another blow, isn't it? Because we know this 50, 60 billion pound black hole, the economy is already contracted by 0.2%. We're going to be in recession almost certainly the next time the figures are announced, going to go on for 2 years. The government are there's a very difficult balancing act, isn't there? They need to calm the markets, they need to restore credibility, but at the same time, they need to not cut off any chance of growth. And at the moment, we're hearing about all these tax rises, stealth tax rises, cuts to public services. And there's a lot of people very concerned now in the Conservative Party and elsewhere that the effect that this is going to have is that actually it's going to make the recession even worse than it already needs to be.
Well, that would be the fundamental problem, wouldn't it? I mean, Rishi Sunak has said he wants growth. Is this the only growth policy that there was? I mean, he can't be removing all growth policies from the autumn statement, can he?
Well, I mean, Jeremy Hunt, when he was briefly campaigning to be leader, said that he wanted to cut corporation tax to 15%, and now they are putting it up to 25%. So we will wait to see. I mean, let's hope that there are some positive announcements, but we do seem to have had a complete reversal from Liz Truss coming in, going growth, 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 to the message now, which is all about we have to get inflation under control. When inflation is under control, then we can concern ourselves with how we move forward. But it is
not necessarily a bad thing, is it? I mean, trying to look on the positives here I mean, the focus is fiscal responsibility. Now, that's not a bad thing to aim for, is it? We can't get there without pain, unfortunately.
No, that's very true. And, of course, we had the messaging, didn't we, in the summer from Liz Truss, growth, 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 tax cuts. But Rishi Sunak said that was fairy tale economics. This is difficult. Jeremy Hunt said eye-wateringly difficult decisions. We had a huge amount of spending during the pandemic, furlough, lots of people's wages being paid. The government had to spend huge amounts of money. Now some of these bills have to be paid. So it is very difficult. One positive, I would say, is it sounds like we don't know for sure. But remember, only a few weeks ago, all the speculation that the triple lock might be ditched, that benefits might only rise along with wages, there'll be a real terms cut. It does sound like the triple lock will stay. It does sound like benefits are going to rise with inflation. So some potentially good news for pensioners, potentially good news for people on benefits.
But if that is the case, that's going to cost £11 billion.
Yeah.
Isn't it? 11 billion quid. So it's not as though we're not going to be spending some money.
Yeah. But this government, this iteration of the Conservative government, they did say very clearly at the beginning, we're going to be a compassionate Conservative government. We're going to look after the most vulnerable first, because I think they saw the terrible backlash to Kwasi Kwarteng, Liz Truss's budget, saying tax cuts for the very richest, the tax cut, the top rate of tax, etc. So they're determined to be seen that whatever they do is fair. There's going to be pain for everybody, but less pain for the people at the bottom.
Talking about compassion, I was quite interested, well, we've all been very interested in front page lead of The Times today, talking about the fact that some care homes seem to still be forbidding visitors, and that Helen Whately, who's now the care minister, is going to do something about this, and fast. And you can only trust that she really does feel this, because apparently she nearly lost her mum in a care home where she wasn't allowed to visit her just some months ago.
Yes, this is very personal to her, because, as you say, her mum was very ill. She didn't know if she would ever see her mother again in person. But it's quite astonishing. I had to sort of do a double take when I read this, because apparently hundreds of care homes are still refusing access or only allowing one person in. So Helen Whately, the care minister, they are going to introduce laws to make it that people, patients and residents in care homes will have a legal right to have visitors, because
to actually enshrine it in law.
To enshrine
I think that's
it
a really good move
in law, because some of the most horrific scenes during the pandemic, weren't they, where elderly, vulnerable people died alone. Their loved ones were not allowed to speak to them. And also, of course, very often elderly people, people with dementia, people who are very vulnerable, they don't necessarily eat properly. The staff are very stretched. Often relatives go in and they're helping people to eat. They're losing weight. They don't necessarily understand what's going on, why their daughter, their son, their husband can't visit. It really was very, very cruel. And
it's continuing to be so. That's the most stunning thing.
It is amazing, isn't it? And let's hope, I don't know how quickly these laws can be brought in, but let's hope that that will soon be a thing of the past.
It's worse than being in prison.
Yeah,
get more visitation rights in prison.
Yeah,
really desperate. And when you need your loved ones more than ever, when you're old, when you're vulnerable, when you're potentially at the end of life, to be denied that very basic human right really does seem very inhumane.
Very odd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
And if that's something that has actually affected you, do let us know, won't you? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Have you been in a situation where you haven't been able to visit? I can't imagine how terribly distressing that must be. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
It's 9 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines. And people in the Ukrainian city of Kherson have gathered in the streets, celebrating their armed forces. After Putin's soldiers were ordered to retreat, crowds have been seen cheering and chanting, with President Zelensky calling it a historic day. The withdrawal marked the third major Russian retreat of the war.
World leaders have scrapped the so-called family photo for their upcoming G20 summit. They're refusing to be pictured alongside President Putin or his representatives after unanimously condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Putin has confirmed he's going to skip the meeting altogether to avoid confrontation.
The government's given councils a further £13.5 million to help them stop landlords who exploited the housing system. Currently, housing providers who profit from benefit claims but don't properly support vulnerable tenants can be fined up to £30,000. The new funding will help councils step up inspections and carry out better scrutiny of housing benefit claims.
And the Met Police Commissioner has warned that public sector strikes could hinder crime fighting. Sir Mark Rowley says it's because of an overflow of work for officers. Speaking to The Telegraph, he also says only 22% of calls to the Met Police relate to crime.
A House of Lords committee is calling for a new corporate criminal offence to tackle what they call a permissive culture around fraud. They hope the threat of tough action will incentivise all industries to prevent spoof calls and scam messages before they reach us. The committee says the online safety bill must be strengthened.
And the royal family is going to gather for the annual Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance. The event will commemorate the country's war dead and mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. It'll also pay tribute to the late Queen, of course, and the 70 years of service to the country and to British Armed Forces.
Well, as we were saying there, Ukrainian troops have liberated Kherson on a historic night for the Ukrainian forces. The army was greeted by crowds of residents waving blue and yellow flags. Now, the retreat is a huge setback for Moscow, make no doubt about it, marking the largest defeat for the invading Russians since they were forced back from the capital, Kyiv, in April.
Joining us now is the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good morning.
Good morning again.
Good news?
Well, it is, yeah. But the Ukrainians, of course, have been very Ukrainian and intelligent about this and said, you know, it ain't all over. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. And they could be quite vulnerable in Kherson. The thing that is surprising, and I think that they, again, prepared the public, national and international, very well with this, they got into Kherson much quicker than they said they would. And this, we now have got to watch it. I mean, haven't we learned something? They're so clever at what you call, in conjuring, misdirection. They say that, only at the beginning of last week they were saying the really heavy fighting is going on in Donetsk, and there is heavy fighting going on there, and saying, well, things hadn't moved. And they got the reporters saying things hadn't moved in Kherson, and they knew that that things were going to crack. And we don't know how much Russia has had to leave behind in materiel, but far more important, in humanity. I mean, how many prisoners have been taken? Because the figures have gone up and down like a yo-yo. One minute we heard there were 40,000 on the West Bank, then there were 20,000, then they all got out. No, they didn't get out. And the commanders in Kherson yesterday were warning that could be Russians around and have told Ukrainian citizens of Kherson to be very, very careful.
I was going to say, I mean, there was a lot of concern that this could be some sort of trap.
Yes. Again, very clever by the Ukrainian. Information is a major arm of the Ukrainian operation, to the extent that, and I think, as I've said before, that they're only explaining so much of their plans, even to their closest allies. And they've got two close allies in NATO. Number one, the big guy, is the US, and the slightly, well, quite littler guy, but very important, is the UK. And they consult all the time, but they consult about what they want to consult about. And don't tell them the whole picture and the whole story.
Have they always been like this, the Ukrainians? Have they been very strategic and clever?
Ukraine has a great literature. I don't want to go on. It's mostly about Cossacks and gangsters and bandit kings and so on, but very rich, a very rich culture. And they've had such a terrible time, particularly through the late 19th and the whole of the 20th century, off and on, including famines with millions dying, pogroms and so on, that they're naturally very, very suspicious. But there's another side, which is very sort of Slavic from the area. It's very open and slap you on the back and let's have a lot of fun. When you get the Chief Defence Information Officer informing the chief correspondent of the BBC, you know something's up. He is saying what he wants to say.
Yes.
And he is not.
And there's a reason behind it.
The reason behind it. And he won't tell you all the time what you really should be asking about.
But this is not without concern, is it? Because for a kick-off, Russia says Kherson is now its territory. It's been in those sham referendums.
A two-edged sword, that
right,
one.
Yeah. But also, this is a major setback for Putin. Yeah. And so what you've got to ask, what is he going to do?
Can I start with the second? That they've been protecting Putin. There's absolutely no doubt about it. You referred to the G20. The reason why Mr. Putin can't go to the G20 is he simply can't afford to be out of the country. Now, there has been rumbling and grumbling, and the way he set up the military to take all the flak with that very staged meeting on telly, live, Yes, sir. I report that the commander, Surovikin, reports to Shoigu, the defence minister. Yes, I give you permission to retreat. Oh, come on. It isn't done like this. What the media have been doing, the mainstream state media, is to protect Putin. There's no doubt about it. When they've been talking about manoeuvres over Kherson, and it is a retreat, if not a defeat. Absolutely, you can't conceal that. The name Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin doesn't come into the text at that point. Now, going back to, is it a trap or whatever, you could just imagine the 3 or 4 key Ukrainian generals have been pretty smart up to now because they can show success. With the odd setback, and there is terrific fighting around Bakhmut at the moment, right in the middle, very, very serious, involving the Wagner group, and they're trying to draw in the best of the Ukrainian forces. But they're planning the next stage. And this is going to be the real test for NATO, because its open country was beautifully described by all the correspondents, this flat land. It's the beginning of the steppe, so it's very difficult to get into Kherson. Are they going to be exposed? What the Ukrainians need is a proper, modern, Western-style air force, because they've got a bit of an air force, but it's cast-offs and bits and pieces,
they've been
old
asking
Soviet
for help
stuff.
on that front for years, haven't they? Of months.
Particularly Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor in the United States, said, no, because you can attack into Russian mainland. But with Russia still having long-range weapons, it's got to happen. They've got to build this capacity over the next 6 months for the Ukrainians. On the other side, the bit that we really should be talking about is really how dependent is Russia on Iran now? They've been on another shopping spree at the beginning of the week, as you could probably gather, the very important key figure from the National Security Council of Russia gone in to buy not only more drones, these little things, which I think they're getting on top of. I suspect, I don't know for sure, but they're less of a threat, but they're buying proper ground-to-ground missiles because Russia is running out. And nothing coming, there's no free lunch in this. This is even in the bazaars of Tehran, what Iran appears to be asking for, we want help with our nuclear.
Oh, heck.
You know, so it's where a local, and it is a local war, becomes regional, becomes global. And this is the problem.
Meanwhile, it's Remembrance Sunday tomorrow.
Indeed, and 40 years of the Falklands.
40 years of the Falklands, of course, when we all automatically think of you. We've also got a lot of Ukrainian people in Britain at the moment who are going to be turning up to various remembrance services, and they'll be remembering their own people. Your thoughts?
Yeah. They've taught us a lesson. Nobody gave them a chance of doing what they've been doing. They've reinvented from old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. What they have done in improvising a little army, which is medium-sized, I mean, punch for punch, is better than the British Army at the moment because it can put all these brigades in the field. We could barely put 2 fully swept up, digitalised armoured brigades into the field. We have a lot to learn from that, and the top British generals are actually saying that because they can do digital, the ultra-modern stuff, the bit of the war that is so difficult to see and has been decisive in many areas. But they can also punch through the lines where they see it's weak by using all that. Kharkiv, which was a big counter-strike and unexpected, the breach was done with 15 tanks, 15 tanks. On the ground only. Now, if you can manoeuvre to that position, it's quite something. There are some real brains. I mean, it's time we know the names of quite a few of the Russian generals. We don't know the names, they're not household names, of the 3-4 Ukrainian generals. And there are some real brains and ingenuity. I mean, it's their heads I'd like to get into and say, how on earth are you doing it?
Interesting.
And they must be worried about, with Britain talking about recession, with everybody worried about money. How long is the West going to provide this? A lot of training. They've got to do more and more in-house, in Ukraine and in and around Ukraine.
On a personal note, just quickly though, when you wear your poppy, who do you think of?
I think of the people who died at Goose Green. A dramatic 36 hours, about the size of 2 municipal golf courses. And it was a grind. And they were absolutely terrific. That's the bit. Don't worry, I'm not going to break down and cry and do PTSD, but that's why it was the first acquaintance with PTSD, which became a word in public discussion in 1982. And one of my good friends from that battle, who was the young doctor, Steve Hughes, suffered very, very badly, and eventually he died. He died from it. They were, again, it's a bit like Ukraine. It was a total come-as-you-are party. And we were all cut off. I mean, we were barely in touch with anybody. I had a BBC improv, because I'd gone to cassette recorder and nothing else. And it took me 24 hours to get the report of the battle back. And that's where things are just so different. But it was absolutely terrific from this point of view. You had no editor yakking down the mobile phone at you.
Every cloud. Every cloud. Robert, good to see you. Thank you very much. OK, much more still to come for you, including the sport with Aidan in a few minutes.
We are GB News. And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It is 7:25. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with me and her.
That's one way of putting it. And him, because Aidan McGee's joined us. So
oh, yes.
me and him and him.
Morning, how you
Hello,
doing?
hello. Very well, because it's all rather exciting because we're doing very well in the women's rugby.
We are, yeah, but it's not.
It's last time we checked.
Over yet. It's 1926 at half-time for England. What I would say, though, is that England started at breakneck speed, 14 points ahead, and then there was a clash of heads between Lydia Thompson of England and Portia Woodman of New Zealand. And what that meant was that sending off. It doesn't happen often.
Ooh, who got sent
in
off?
rugby? It was England player. It was Lydia Thompson. Now, perversely, England benefited slightly because Portia Woodman has left the field. She has been replaced, but Portia Woodman's probably New Zealand's best player. So since then, it's been a bit closer. England were overwhelming favourites, I would say, ahead of this final. They've benefited from professionalism in the last three and a half years. New Zealand only went professional in February, although they have been the dominant side throughout history. They've won 6 World Cups to England's 2. England's last one was in 2014. The one before that, 1994. So England really made up the distance recently. But as things stand, 1926 is a thrilling match, it has to be said.
Yeah, and of course, because it's in New Zealand, it is happening this morning.
Exactly,
When will it be all over?
Well, it's half-time right now. We're in the break. But as I say, 1926 is intriguingly poised because, obviously, New Zealand have the player advantage now, and they're expected to press that home in the second half. However, England are extremely good in defence. And also, because New Zealand have lost a flanker, a wide player, it's making it a little bit easier to defend. So since the sending off, things have changed. New Zealand have scored
The dynamic has changed.
The dynamic has changed because New Zealand have scored three twice, but England have still responded with 2. But it's a packed house there, 40,000 people. Will Hollis as well, up at Loughborough today, as we know, keeping us updated. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to the second half, that's for sure.
What's happening with the men?
The men, well, that's the Rugby League, and that's later on today at 2 o'clock at the Emirates. They're playing against Samoa. Now, this is interesting because they played Samoa in the first game a few weeks ago. This tournament's lasting 6 weeks. They really are milking it for whatever they can get out of it. BBC are showing wall-to-wall coverage. They've been getting really good numbers with it as well, up to 2 million for some broadcasts, which shows if you do put sport on terrestrial channels, whatever it is, people will watch. The first match when they played Samoa in the opening game was 60-6. Now, it won't be that again because Samoa have grown in confidence and grown in prowess as the tournament's gone on. It won't be as wide margin as that. However, I do expect England to win that game. They're looking to win the World Cup for the first time in 50 years when they won it as GB back in 1972. They do call themselves England and GB sometimes. It depends how things are arranged at the time. But it was due to happen last year. It's been delayed. It's good as well because I've had 18 venues around the country. And Rugby League...
I was going to say, where's this one?
This one's at the Emirates at Arsenal, which, to my knowledge, has never before staged a Rugby League match. I don't recall it staging even a Rugby Union match as well. It's not somewhere... Arsenal don't really put themselves out for anything other than football. But what's interesting is that Rugby League is predominantly North West and Yorkshire. Very, very little interest in it in the south compared to rugby union, where it's dominant, or even in the West Country. So it's interesting that it's there, but that's part of the success. They've taken it around the country. They haven't just said, look, we're going to go where we're strong. They are going where they're strong as well. They've been up to the northeast as well, where they're quite strong as well. But they're coming down to London as well. So
How much does that matter?
It matters because if you're trying to grow the game, you can't just focus on the areas where you're strong. Now, this isn't a big country. It's a big population. There are plenty of areas you can go. If you're concentrated on the northwest and in Yorkshire, then that's one thing. Keep that strong. But when you're using 18 venues, well, why not just take it around and showcase it? Rugby Union club, the club game in Rugby Union is struggling at the moment. We saw the problems with the Wasps. I think maybe they're trying to steal a march. And also the international game in Rugby League is not as strong as the club game. Rugby Union is the other way around. The international games are really strong. You'll pack out the pubs in Twickenham and Clapham on a match day when England are playing Ireland or Ireland are playing France or Scotland against Wales or whatever. But when it's a club game, the attendances are reasonably robust. But again, they have the opposite problem. They're concentrating in the south and in the West Country. There isn't too much interest in it in the northwest, although you've got Sale Sharks, I suppose, in Manchester. So that promises to be a decent game tomorrow. The final is next week at Old Trafford. That's going to be in front of a capacity crowd. You would have thought Australia beat New Zealand last night at Elland Road in Leeds, and that was a thrilling match, 16-14. They're talking about that as being the best rugby league match ever last night. So yeah, that's good. So it's a good weekend, and there's obviously got the T20 final in cricket tomorrow, the World Cup. So England doing so well, with Britain doing so well in various different disciplines. And as I said yesterday morning, when I broadcast from my front room, kind of at short notice.
That's right,
it's endemic of Britain's prowess in all sports. I do think we're the greatest.
No, I think it's a very good, interesting point.
I think we're strong at everything. Maybe something that we're weak at. We'll have a go at anything. Yeah, we will. That's us as a nation, I suppose, isn't it?
We shall see. We shall see. Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
Nice to see you.
Loads of people getting in touch on the care homes issue.
Gosh, yes.
Debbie says, why are care homes still behaving like this? We couldn't see two relatives before they passed away, not even outside by a window. It's so wrong.
It's extraordinary. I think a lot of people don't know this is still going on. No. Richard says, are you aware that care homes still require visitors, where allowed, to wear masks, inhibiting communication and expressions, confusing and distressing those with dementia, and the care homes claim it's their regulator requiring this?
Stuart says, my mum died in a care home, but I have to say their visiting policies were very liberal. Please thank them for the love they showed my mum and our family. I just wanted to have a positive side to the discussion.
Sue says, I lost my partner in January and wasn't allowed to visit. I spoke to him several times on his mobile and he was very distressed. I will live with this for the rest of my life.
You see, this is the issue, isn't it? For those care homes where this is the case.
Well, we've been talking about it because Helen Waitley is the care minister now, and she almost nearly lost her mum in a care home and wasn't allowed to visit. And she has promised to be on top of this one, hopefully changing the law so that visitors have a legal right to go in and visit their loved ones.
Yeah, it's just about, it's like, why would this apply in some homes and not others? There should be a consistent policy.
Well, Harry says the equivalent in Germany, they've made the same decision. None allow visitors to attend the homes for insurance reasons and to protect staff and residents. That can't be allowed anymore, can it?
No, surely not. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We've got more to come, including the papers, in just a few minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen Allen. I won't repeat what Mary-Anne just said to me there, because it was you'd be in a
It was a slur.
It was a slur. You'd be in a Gavin Williamson situation with.
No, that's a bit extreme.
No, you would.
I don't think I would.
I didn't hear it. I want to know now. Everybody will want to know.
What should I say?
No, do not know, because it would break Ofcom rules if you said it. Anyway, let's just go through the papers. Political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and potty-mouthed anthropologist Mary-Anne Hotter.
It's all right to have
Good
potty
morning.
mouth, though, apparently. Angela Rayner says she's a Mancunian. She has a potty mouth.
Yeah,
she's
I grew
not
up in
ashamed
Cheshire.
of it.
Tell it like it is.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you just said something utterly outrageous, so, you deserved it.
Well, it was my honestly held view. Mary-Anne, to the Daily Telegraph, looking at the Met Police.
Yes, this is Sir Mark Rowley, who's the Met Police Commissioner, and he says that, I think you've been running it as one of the headlines, he reports that 22% of calls to the Met relate to crime. Half of officers on some shifts are doing things like watching over people who are in mental health crisis, who are waiting to be seen in A&E departments and waiting to be looked after by health professionals, which is where they ought to be. Or police officers are being called because social care systems have failed, and so there's some kind of public order disruption, there's a household
So they're
crisis,
almost doing more work to do with social monitoring or
so they're
like being security officers.
Yeah, basically the principle is that when people have fallen through the net from other services, so healthcare or social care, they end up being in the remit of the criminal justice system, which isn't right for police officers, but also isn't right for the people who might actually be having a mental health crisis. You don't want to be, feel as if you're under arrest when actually what you need is being looked after. And so he's saying it's unsustainable, that the problem is going to be exacerbated when other public services might be striking over pay and conditions, whereas police officers aren't allowed to strike. But the bit where he, I guess, is on the same team as other public servants is that he's saying that it has to be that the government funds this, because that's the only way to make these services work. And that the kind of police service has been hollowed out because of pay rises effectively ending up being a real terms pay cut, but also all those support services that the police service and the police officers rely on in order to be able to do their job, to stay well trained, to be current in all their standards, they've been eroded because of lack of funding. And so the police officers, who are kind of, the head of the pyramid, if you will, can't do their jobs as well. So he says we have to go back to establishing trust, fighting crime, and then maintaining standards. And he says, if I'm going to choose a priority order, it's trust, crime, standards, not the other way around. And that some of the bureaucracy of paperwork needs to be stripped away so that police officers can get on with their jobs. Fundamentally, as always, it comes down to money.
And common sense.
Yes. But at least he appears to be grappling with the problem. It's the first time we've heard somebody from the Met absolutely spelling it out.
Yeah, spelling it out. In quite polite terms. He doesn't want to burn bridges, but yeah.
To the Express, Kevin, looking at this energy price guarantee, which means the government's forking out a load of money to oil and gas companies.
Well, what is interesting about this, I think, is that the windfall tax has gone from being a Labour idea to being something that Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, grudgingly introduced, but with loopholes which allowed companies to avoid paying it if they could say that they were investing in new technology. Two, basically a key part of this week's autumn statement looks like it's going to be increasing the rate of windfall tax and extending the length of the windfall tax, because they realise, as we talked about earlier, they're desperate for money, so they need to raise lots more of it. So they're going to basically hammer the energy companies. And politically as well, it's not a bad idea, because people struggling to pay their bills, they then look at the likes of Shell or BP posting record eye-watering profits, and they think, hang on a minute, that's not fair. Why don't they basically stump up a bit more money? And the government are going to do that. They're going to hammer them more, it looks like, to try and raise something like £10 billion, which, you know,
why is the paper saying, according to this, that North Sea oil and gas companies could rake in £7 billion of taxpayers' money from the government's energy price guarantee?
No, that's not right. It's the levy. It's the windfall tax is predicted to raise £7 billion this year. So they're not taking in government money. The government's taking the money off them, and then it would go up to £10 billion by 2023, because it will raise a further £3 billion. So yeah, as I say, what they're looking to do is basically get more money out of the companies.
Out of the energy giants.
Which I think, as I say, politically, no one's going to argue with that. But I just think it's interesting, this journey that the government have been on. So I remember January time, February, when Labour were first calling for a windfall tax, the Conservatives were dead against it. They said it stopped investment going in. And now it's like, hang on a minute, now that they're desperate for the money, all of a sudden they've had a conversion and are massively in favour of a windfall tax. So.
But some of the energy giants in the North Sea, I think Shell reported that they haven't actually paid any windfall tax, and this was prior to kind of the rules slightly changing, because there's this loophole where if they reinvest in oil and gas installations, then they get off scot-free. So they can kind of call it reinvested surplus, and then they don't pay any tax on. Well, I think they posted something like a $20 billion profit. I mean, that is just
eye-watering, isn't it?
Eye-watering amounts of money. And it's profiteering. It's profiteering from a war. I
think it's the fact that there's
a system that actually.
Yeah, I think the feeling is that they've benefited from a global spike in price. It's not through any great brainwave.
It's a market economy, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But also, they have control over the tap. If you know, they can effectively monopolise the price of oil and gas, because they can pump it out or not and work out where they sell it.
Have they reacted to this extension of the windfall tax yet?
Well, not yet, because it's not been confirmed. It will get confirmed on Thursday. But, you know, I think, to be fair, I think it was the chief executive of BP, I think it was, who, way back when the Conservatives were still resisting it, was saying, actually, yeah, we could absolutely afford a windfall tax, and it wouldn't affect...
It did there, didn't it?
It wouldn't affect our investment plans at all, because we've made all this extra money. So, you know, we can well afford to pay it.
Wow.
So.
Oh, nice.
Oh, there you go.
Mary, this extraordinary story of the Russian soldier who effectively became a human bomb.
Yeah, this is a really strange one. So this is a Roman junior officer, Russian junior officer, sorry, fighting near Kherson, hit by a grenade that enters under his body armour into his lung cavity, doesn't kill him, but also doesn't detonate. And so then he becomes this kind of human bomb and begged the Russian surgeons, these kind of specialist surgeons, not to operate in case it blew up, basically. So all the Russian news have released these photographs and this video footage of the surgeons operating on this soldier wearing full body armour in case he detonated.
Because it was a live grenade.
It was a live grenade. It hadn't gone off, but it was live. The kind of pin had been pulled out, as it were. And one of those strange stories that you get from the war, the operation was successful and he's now recovering.
It is extraordinary, but
so
also,
bizarre.
yeah, I mean, you have to remember these are all human beings, aren't they? Whichever side they're fighting on.
Yeah, that's it. And the person, standing in the operating theatre, who's trained as a medic, who, is committed to saving lives, wants to save the life in front of them. At that point, it doesn't really matter what colour uniform you're wearing.
No, it's their job to save lives, isn't it? And how heroic that they went ahead and did it, despite the obvious danger to themselves and everybody else in the theatre.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah.
Let's have a look at migrants, should we, in the Express. This new deal, Kevin, may be ready in a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think possibly we should treat this one with a little bit of a health warning. I mean, it's in the Downing Street's interest to talk up the prospect of a deal because they want to reassure the public that they're doing something and that help is on the way. And also, you know, that they're making a clean break from the Liz Truss era when it was, is Macron a friend or a foe? Well, the jury's out type of thing. But the briefings from the other side of the fence have been, well, actually, let's just hang on a little minute. It might not be quite as imminent as maybe the British are being led to believe. However, in saying that, yesterday, James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, met with the French Minister for Europe, Catherine Colonna, and it does seem as though progress was made. It looks like there will be some sort of deal. Whether it's within a week or not is open to question, but it certainly looks like it's coming, which would allow British border force people to basically go onto the beaches in France to help.
And that's the key.
Turn back.
The key move.
Yeah,
That's what they've wanted for a long time.
Yeah, so it's to try
Macron
and
didn't want to do it.
Yeah, so it looks as though new Prime Minister. There does certainly, we saw the pictures during the week of Sunak and Macron. There definitely does seem to be a bit of a rapport there that wasn't there previously, to put it mildly.
Does it? If we've got British officers working with French officers on the beaches, if they stop sailings happening, does that then mean that we will start a processing process in France, so that we will still be able to interview and process people who want to come to Britain?
I think,
before they actually leave France.
I think that is the ultimate aim, and I think that's probably the fine detail of the agreement that they're trying to reach, is precisely where these people are processed. Because I think, as far as Britain's concerned, is they think, well, if you process them on the other side of the channel, that negates the need for them to then try and make it to the UK. But again, I mean, this is something that's obviously been going on for quite some time. No deal has been reached yet. There's been a lot of negotiations between the British and the French, but it does look much more optimistic now than it did, you know, under the previous administration, and probably even under Boris Johnson as well. So
it might be easier to find out who the gangs are as well, because, you know, you're actually nipping it in the bud before they're actually able to put people in the water.
Absolutely, yeah, because there's a lot of like bad people making an awful lot of money out of human misery.
Yes, there is indeed. Look, there we must leave it, I'm afraid. Mary-Anne, Kevin, thank you both very much indeed. Catch up with you in the next hour. In the meantime, there's a lot of politics going on a whole host of issues, actually. So let's talk to the Shadow Minister for Levelling Up, Alex Norris. Good morning to you. It's nice to see you this morning. Can we start first and foremost, because it's certainly got our viewers going this morning, and it's that piece in the Times about care homes, where a number of care homes are not allowing people in still to see them. And Helen Whatley's saying she wants to enshrine it in law, the right to visit. Are you as surprised as we all are that some homes are still being very, very restrictive?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, thanks for having me this morning. I hope you're both well. You know, we know that visiting care homes, visiting loved ones is a really integral part of someone's life, both for those who are doing the visiting and for those who are visited. It is, I have to say, it was quite surprising to read that. We would want, you know, all of these places to be doing everything they can to facilitate visiting. And, you know, it's been shown now for a long period of time, there's plenty of ways to do that to minimise the risk. And it is surprising that that's not happening.
It's not just surprising, though. I mean, it's incredibly distressing, isn't it? What possible justification can they have?
Well, I mean, that would be a matter for them. I find that hard to believe, as you say. I certainly, if that was my loved one in that situation, and we all in some way will be connected in this way in the past or in the future, yeah, that would be exceptionally distressing, as you say, and that would be something we wouldn't want to see.
Can we talk levelling up? Because, I mean, any sort of levelling up is going to be extremely difficult under the current economic climate, isn't it? And for the foreseeable, it has to be said. What are you making of what we're hearing about what may be in the autumn statement?
Well, I mean, first of all, Stephen, we've got a Prime Minister who, as Chancellor, was proudly boasting that he rerouted money from some of the more deprived communities to better off ones, which obviously is the reverse of levelling up. As you say, what we're likely to see in this week's budget is not going to help much. This is the reality of a government that has crashed our economy and now expects hardworking people to pick up the bill for that. I think people will rightly be very disappointed in this. There isn't a mandate for it, and I think that's a very good reason for a general election, frankly.
What do you think of, it's something that we were just discussing there in the newspaper review, the fact that the energy giants could possibly now be landed with more of a windfall tax than before, when Rishi Sunak himself said only a couple of months ago, no way, it's not the Tory thing to have a windfall tax. And it's something that Sir Keir Starmer has been talking about for months.
Yeah, and we've done this dance now. This is the third time this calendar year that we say, the oil and gas giants have made eye-watering profits that they weren't expecting, as your previous panellists said, and that it would be an equitable thing for them to help meet some of the pain that the British people are feeling. The government that says, oh, no, we're not doing that, it'll stifle investment, which isn't true. The companies say that's not the case. And then eventually they do it, and we're about to see whether that's going to happen for a third time. Of course, that would be the right thing to do, which is why we've been calling for it, and we very much hope that we were able to push them into doing it. But there is the very important point, though, about whether anything is actually being paid in these windfall taxes, because we know that some of the big producers have avoided them altogether at the moment by, say, investment in fossil fuel extraction. Well, that's, I think, the wrong balance. So we want to see a windfall tax this week, and we want to see it paid.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Thursday with all of that. There's lots of controversy in the papers about bullying in government at the moment, isn't there? And obviously the Ministry of Justice is now the latest department to get hit by all of these claims. I wonder what your take is on all of that. Bear in mind, some of it may be sort of fruity language and language that some people may find offensive and all the rest of it. I mean, your deputy leader, Angela Rayner, is known for her fruity language and you said some very offensive things about Conservatives over recent times. Where do you draw the line between a bit of dirty politics, a bit of unpleasant language and bullying?
Well, I think, you would know from your workplace, Stephen, that you treat your staff well. I've no doubt about that. And it's cowards that bully their staff, people who, in that power imbalance, can't really do very much about it and simply have to put up with what we've seen happen. I mean, obviously, we're only reading in the last sort of 24 hours some of the issues relating to the Deputy Prime Minister and what he may or may not have thrown, and it's important that that's given the full airing. But we do know what happened with Gavin Williamson. That's accepted. We do know actually that previously the previous Home Secretary bullying. We as a public paid hundreds of thousands to cover up. To apologise for the bullying that she'd done as staff. I just don't think government ministers should be bullying civil servants, and we can make this as complicated as we want in terms of what language people use or what other behaviours people exhibit in public. But fundamentally, I just don't think they should do that, and I don't really think that should be very controversial.
OK, we're going to leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much indeed, though, for joining us. Alex Norris, MP now, Shadow Minister for Levelling Up. Still thinking about those care homes. Elizabeth says it's the advice and guidelines that need to be changed. Some care homes are going overboard trying to comply in order to avoid getting into trouble with the Care Quality Commission. And this is what's causing the problems. I work in a care home and have first-hand experience of these terrible issues.
Well, keep your thoughts coming through. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We've got all your top stories coming up for you after the weather.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. The weekend has started mild and it will continue that way. Not as windy out there today compared to the last couple of days, and there is some fog around, dense fog in a few spots too. This is the big picture, high pressure to the east, low to the west, and we're kind of in between with this weather front straddling across central areas, pushing northwards through the day, so a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern and central Scotland, but that rain is going to edge its way clear. There is some fog around that may take a few hours to clear, and for some it could just stay grey all day, particularly parts of northeast England and northern Scotland. But for most of us it is going to brighten up through the day, and we'll see some
spells of sunshine. Still a bit breezy in the west, but not as windy as yesterday. And it is still very mild. With a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting up into the high teens, perhaps, even where it's grey. We'll see temperatures into the teens. This evening, it stays largely dry and fine, but it could turn quite misty again quite quickly, especially over central and eastern parts of England. Some dense patches of fog are possible that, again, could linger for much of Sunday. Still a bit breezy in the west, keeping skies a little clear here. And again, for most, it is going to be a very mild night, with most towns and cities staying in double digits. The details for Sunday, well, again, likely to start pretty drab, misty, murky, even foggy. That mist and fog will take a while to clear over eastern counties of England. Some will stay gloomy all day. Further west, a weather front will eventually bring some rain into the west of Northern Ireland, although I suspect Belfast will stay dry until dusk. Elsewhere tomorrow, most places, again, seeing some sunny spells, and it is going to be mild, even where it's cloudy, 13 or 14, with some sunshine. Temperatures, again, getting into the high teens. Could be quite foggy for Monday morning's commute, but we will see a change through next week, turning wet on Tuesday, turning less warm, but still around average.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prime Minister delays growth plans as the UK heads towards a recession.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 12th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
As you know, we're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are and whatever you're up to today, there's no excuse. Take us with you. These are your top stories.
Rishi Sunak has shelved a flagship policy meant to boost Britain's economy, prompting fears next week's autumn budget won't be enough to stimulate growth now. The Bank of England has also warned the UK could be on course for the longest recession on record.
Ukraine's president has announced the Russian army has been pushed out of the southern city of Kherson in a historic moment for his forces. Russia's defence ministry announced they've been forced to withdraw more than 30,000 troops. It's Moscow's biggest setback so far.
And England are currently well underway in the Women's Rugby World Cup final against New Zealand. England still currently winning 31-29, but with 20 minutes left to go, the game could go either way.
We'd love to hear from you this morning, whatever it's about. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Lots of stuff about care homes coming through. Anything lighter as well would always...
Yeah, like whether or not you're inspired by how well the British women are doing, the English women are doing in the rugby at the moment. I mean, it may well be, given that it's a Saturday, that you're off with the kids in the back of the car or something, or the grandkids, and you're going to watch them play a match, football or rugby or something like that today. Are they inspired by how well our women's team are doing at the moment?
Let us know. Well, the Prime Minister is set to delay his flagship growth policy of cutting taxes on business investments, adding to fears that the autumn statement on Thursday is not going to be enough to stimulate the economy.
Rishi Sunak is also preparing to cut defence spending in real terms as inflation soars.
Well, meanwhile, senior Tories are urging the Chancellor not to go too far on tax rises in the autumn statement, as it could risk prolonging the economic recession if we go into a recession. We haven't yet.
No, and I strongly believe that maybe we shouldn't talk our way into a recession. For more, let's speak to the broadcast editor at The Spectator, Cindy Yu. Hello there.
Morning.
Do you think there's anything in that if we talk about recession too much, it's going to happen anyway?
Well, yeah, business confidence is definitely a thing. I mean, economics is not exactly a science. It's in some ways more like psychology. So if you are a small and medium-sized business, or if you are even a corporate, any actor in the economy can have that confidence dampened. And if you're a household, you might be putting more in savings now rather than kind of spending and going out there. So absolutely, Anne, I think you're right to point out that we're not in recession yet. The trends are not looking great, but let's not
It's a difficult balancing act, though, isn't it? And you highlight it perfectly when you say, well, families are putting more into savings and not going out spending. Well, yes, that doesn't stimulate growth. But what it does do, presumably, is bring down inflation, which is what we want.
And I think this is the fundamental tension with what the government is trying to do at the moment. The senior Tories that you've quoted here have said that, if you're going to do this, well, it's not going to stimulate growth. But actually what Rishi Sunak is trying to do, but not really saying much, is he's trying to make the government a metric through which inflation can be brought down as well. Traditionally, that is the Bank of England's role, but under Rishi Sunak, he believes that fiscal spending, the government's own actions, can have an impact on that. And of course, that is true. But then the question is, well, who does look after growth? At what point do we put forward these kind of growth plans or long-term investments? One story that I saw last week, which was a bit concerning, was kind of this reviewing of nuclear plants. We're in this situation because we don't have a secure nuclear supply, energy supply. So if through cutting costs, we're actually kind of kneecapping ourselves in the future, that is a balance that I think the Chancellor and the Prime Minister will need to strike right.
And also talking about defence cuts at a time when I'm afraid we are still at war. I mean, I know we're personally not considering ourselves to be at war, but we're certainly supporting Ukraine in a terrible war there. And every day we're sort of highlighting what we haven't sort of invested in defence in more recent years. Yeah, and it's just so difficult to call right, isn't it? Because who knows, maybe this is the way to bring down government yields and in the future have, a smaller black hole, fiscal black hole, which means that we can then spend more in the future. It's just really, really tricky
to get this right. And I don't think anyone at this stage really knows for sure. And that's what you've got people, experts in the Treasury, experts in the Bank of England, experts like Liz Truss, arguably, right, sure.
But is this a case of, and I'm trying to look positively on it because I think it's the best way to do it. But
even you, Stephen.
Well, yeah, but even if he's cutting this tax relief for business investment in the short term, is it about making that bitter pill, which we've got to swallow, sort of more bitter but smaller and faster, at which point we can then start seeing some rewards early next year?
I think that's right. I think Rishi Sunak's plan is to do all of this now, and then in a year's time start talking about the tax cuts that could come with another Conservative government, the way that which public spending has been brought under control under this government, and you can trust us, because that is a fundamental pledge of the Conservative Party, that you can trust us on the economy, and that is in question at the moment.
So good.
That's in question at the moment.
It's
but yes, I think you're right.
You were talking about the fact that economics is not absolutely a science. It's more of an emotional sort of pull. And that works with the markets as well. When we saw with Liz Truss's mini-budget, the markets were spooked. And we're talking all the time at the moment about them, keeping the markets calm. Why are they so blinking emotional? And would they, if we just stuck with somebody's idea for a while, would they settle?
I know, it's so true, isn't it? I didn't realise that investment bankers and hedge funds would be the real snowflakes. But they were really properly spooked.
You'll know this. When we talk about the markets being spooked, were all these heads of hedge funds and everything in the city picking up the phone to each other and just panicking at each other?
Oh, well, I don't know that much detail, but unfortunately. But I think basically the point is we are borrowing. The government is borrowing to fund our spending, right? And if the creditors that we're borrowing from doesn't want to lend to us anymore because they don't think we can pay it back, that's what it means. And
that's what spooking is.
That's what the spooking means. And the markets are like, well, we don't want to give you any more money because you're just spending money all over the place. And I don't know if you'll ever be able to pay this back. So that very much is understandable. But actually what the Truss government was right in saying is that the whole world is in economic turmoil at the moment. What the Truss government just did was shine the limelight on us, spooking the markets when it comes to us, but now the markets kind of feeding on other economies and looking at elsewhere. And we're seeing that with Rishi Sunak coming in, that the markets have kind of dissipated and they're looking at other places now. But the Liz Truss government was right that while economic problems are not by far the worst in the world, but we just unfortunately had the limelight shone on us on very controversial policies.
Do we ignore the Labour Party and others when, I mean, our guest earlier on was saying, well, look what the government's done to our economy. Well, is it actually down to the government, or are we just feeling the impact of COVID and all the funding there and the impact of what's happening on the global markets?
Well, we have had 12 years of Conservative government, so it's hard not to give them responsibility, at least partial. Of course, when it comes to the Russian invasion, when it comes to COVID, these are not factors within their control. And actually, I would struggle to see what Labour would have done differently under the pandemic. If anything, they would have spent more, you would have thought, than the 44 billion that we spent on furlough under Rishi Sunak. So I would be surprised if the debt was kind of lower than what it would be if Labour was in government. But Labour would probably say, if we were in government, we'd have more growth because we wouldn't have gone through the austerity years. And that really choked off growth, would be their argument. And, that's counterfactual, we'll never know. Yeah. But I think the Conservative government can't be, reduced of responsibility given they have been in government for 12 years.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. It is a fair point. Can I just ask you a quick thought on this care homes issue? What do you make of all of it? It seems extraordinary that you would imagine, I know they're all sort of run as private businesses in a way, but you would imagine that care homes all followed a similar protocol. It seems very odd that some care homes allow visitors, but some still are not.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I had no idea about this until I was reading it in the Times this morning. I mean, the fact that they're citing COVID as a reason when any legal restrictions around COVID was long gone is seems like a massive black hole. And I'm really glad that Helen Whately, who clearly has personal experience of the social care situation, is doing something about it. But it's incredible in the story, as you say, Stephen, that you need legislation to actually give patients and their families
patients
a right.
and their visitors the legal right to see each other.
Great that we're doing this now, but okay, I didn't realise that wasn't a... But yeah,
I mean... We didn't know about it particularly. Everybody we've spoken to this morning didn't actually know it was at this level. That means that that, I mean, out-of-touch government ministers, did they know that? Maybe that explains why nothing enough has been done.
And I think maybe you need some kind of regulator or something like that just to make sure standards are at a minimum level across the industry, because as you say,
the Care
Stephen,
Quality Commission is meant to do
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But something's
good
fallen
questions about how
short,
they operate,
isn't it?
I think. Cindy, really good to see you. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Thank you for making sense of it all a little bit.
It'd be nice to
Which is what we
understand
need.
it, wouldn't it? Sean says a cynical person might say that the reason the care homes won't allow relatives in is so they won't see the terrible conditions their loved ones are having to endure. Sad but true, I think. But it may be in some cases, I don't know. I mean, we've also had reports of people saying they've got loved ones in care homes and they're being brilliantly looked after.
Dawn's common sense, though, Dawn, I like this. She said, my mum was in a care home during COVID. I saw her once from the start of lockdown until her final 12 hours before she passed away, and I was allowed to be with her. But my anger is at COVID, not the government or Matt Hancock. And I agree with you on that, Dawn. I sort of all think this hate which is being thrown at Matt Hancock at the moment is crackers. Actually, I don't understand where that's coming from. That's all very heavy, isn't it? And it's all very depressing, and it's going to keep on being a little bit depressing this morning. So should I bring you a little bit of lighter news?
Oh yes, please.
Something to make you smile.
Please.
Stephen Bathgate, thank you for getting in touch, Stephen. He says, love your show. We watch every one. Oh, that's very nice. But today, he's got other things on his mind.
Oh.
Because today I'm getting married to my beautiful fiancée, Simone, and can't wait to see her in her dress walking down the aisle. Lots of love from Stephen Bathgate in Edinburgh.
Oh, Stephen,
So have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
And it's that, I mean, that's something
See,
to
it's
remember.
Saturday. It's one of those days. A lot of people getting married today. If you're going to a lovely wedding, tell us about it, please. GB Views at gbnews.uk, because we really all do need cheering up, don't we?
We do, and something to smile about and something to look forward to in the future in your lovely married life together, Stephen. Stephen and Simone, there you go.
Very nice.
Enjoy the day. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of this morning's headlines at 12 minutes past 8.
Well, the government has given councils a further £13.5 million to help them stop landlords who exploit the supported housing system. Currently, housing providers who profit from benefit claims but don't properly support their vulnerable tenants can be fined up to £30,000. But the new funding will help councils step up inspections and carry out better scrutiny of housing benefit claims.
The Met Police Commissioner has warned public sector strikes could hinder crime fighting. Sir Mark Rowley says it's because of an overflow of work for officers. Talking to The Telegraph, he also says only 22% of calls to the Met Police actually relate to crime.
And the royal family is going to attend the annual Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall. The event will commemorate the country's war dead and mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. And it'll also pay tribute to the late Queen for her service to the country and British Armed Forces. But the service at the Royal Albert Hall is happening tomorrow, isn't it?
No.
It's tonight.
Today. So there's two. There's a 2 o'clock service for anyone, and then the Royals, theirs is at 7 o'clock
That's
tonight.
the British Legion thing.
And it's
the Royal British
But if you want to watch it on the telly, for some reason it's not being shown live, but they are replaying it at 9 o'clock tonight.
Because your other half is involved.
My other half is involved, so I shall be staying up very late to watch it at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, you have to pick him out.
I will. I will.
He's going to be standing near to the King.
Near the King. Yeah.
Probably not allowed to say any more, are you?
I'm not allowed to say. I do know a few little details, but I'm not. No, it's all strictly.
I shall watch out for his face, though.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, let's talk a cost of living crisis again, should we? And to support it all, or support us all, the government introduced the Energy Bill Support Scheme. The first £66 was delivered to eligible UK adults last month. You may have had your second payment as well. I got mine yesterday, actually.
Oh, really? Thousands of households with centrally supplied energy have appeared to fall through the gap, though, and have been left waiting to hear if they will receive the £400 promised to them.
Well, let's talk to senior market strategist Mike Ingram, who's here. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is a centrally supplied system, then?
Right, this could be a number of things. So it's maybe you have like a housing development. You might have had a house which was converted into bed sits. It might be so-called things like park homes. There are about 180,000 of those in the UK. And what happens is the electricity is supplied, if you like, centrally, and then the individual apartments or whatever have sub-meters.
Right.
But it all comes from the one central point. And
but the central point is billed, if you like.
Exactly. So that could be a landlord directly, or it could be an agent of the landlord, because quite often these properties are owned overseas by trusts or something. And what seems to be happening is a lot of this money doesn't seem to be coming through. From what I understand, I mean, I did have a good dig around on this subject. It doesn't seem like even the landlords are getting the relief. So it doesn't even at this point seem to be a case that the landlords aren't passing that relief on and apportioning it to their tenants. It's that they're not even getting the payments. And as I say, this means that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of households are slipping through the net. And really, it just seems like an administrative nightmare, because many of these properties are sort of mixed use. So, for instance, you might have, and there was one example where I think it was 62 apartments being administered by a landlord in Devon. And they said, well, the majority of these homes are holiday homes, and they shouldn't be getting any kind of support at all, and quite rightly so. But a lot of these people are elderly residents who are wintering there, but they're also not getting the support. And these are precisely the sort of people who definitely should be getting these payments.
What do we think of the morality of a landlord who is getting that relief, the £400, and isn't passing it on? Because if somebody is renting a flat and they just pay a flat rate rent, and that includes electricity, then is that fair enough that the landlord should get the relief rather than them?
Absolutely not.
Why?
The relief is it?
Why absolutely not? If someone's paying a flat rate rent, including all the bills, and the bills go up, that's not going to be then reflected in their rent, is it, under the contract?
Well, at the end of the day, this is public money, and the policy is intended to go to the households. It's not intended to go to the people who are renting, who are
the bill payer.
The land. Yeah. So that's the situation. And at the end of the day, this relief isn't means tested. In principle, it's applicable to every single household in the UK. And of course, that's something that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are going to be looking at. And I would imagine that when this whole thing gets revised in the spring, we're going to see it a lot more targeted. And by the way, the overall bill is going to come down. I think that's pretty much a certainty. But as it stands at the moment, these people are entitled to the payments. It's not coming through. Now, whether or not the landlord wants to offset that by not passing that on, we'll find. But
there's no legal obligation, is there, for a landlord to pass on that? If they're the bill payer, then where's the legal obligation for them to pass that discount on?
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm afraid I can't answer that question. And I think more disturbingly, even though this policy was first introduced in February this year, it seems that the government hasn't worked that out either. So, we now are aware of the problem, and the response from the government thus far seems to be, well, it's going to take weeks rather than months. Well, that's great. We're already mid-November. That could possibly mean that we're looking into 2023 before this is resolved.
So if you're living in a house and you feel that you're entitled to this money, but you're not getting it, it's just not coming through, what's your advice? Who do you appeal to?
Well, I'm not sure I should be giving legal stroke financial advice on this, but certainly should be pursuing the landlord and finding out what the situation is. However, it does seem at the moment that the landlords themselves are equally in the dark. It's not clear to me that the landlords are receiving this payment in the first place to then pass on to their tenants.
That's really well thought through, isn't it?
Well, it's it's
government policy.
Though, isn't it? But we are still in this situation, aren't we? Which again, I have to say, does seem immoral. That it's those people who are less able to pay who are therefore then put on meters, the prepay meters, who are then charged more for the power anyway. Now, that seems absolutely immoral.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason that people on meters are charged somewhat more it's a so-called poverty premium, which are two words you don't see together very often, is because it's more expensive for energy companies to administer these sort of top-up meters. So I kind of get it. And it's 2 to 3%, which, OK, it's a number. It's money that these people, who are perhaps quite needy, shouldn't be paying over, but it's there. But yes, you're quite right. I mean, if you're on, direct debit or traditional credit or a smart meter, you're probably getting your payments. It's the people who are on prepayment meters, the people who are in bed sits, etc., that probably aren't. And of course, those tend to be the most vulnerable in society.
Yeah. Mike, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Absolutely.
If you're affected by that, it'd be good to hear from you.
It
this
really
morning.
would, yes.
But I think what it highlights, though, if I'm being absolutely honest, is these systems, they sound all very good on paper. When it comes to implementing them, it is incredibly complicated.
Problems, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you are affected, do get in touch with us. 20 minutes past 8. We've got much more to come, including that big breakthrough in Ukraine's war against Russia.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.24, Saturday the 12th. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, and if you're getting married today, go on, tell us all about it. Now, we've had one message in, haven't we, from Stephen, who's getting married to Simone today. And that's given us a chance to at least smile and have some happy news. So if you've got any happy news to tell us, please keep it coming in. gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Sort of happy news, though it's hard. It's difficult when it's in the theatre of war, isn't it? But Ukrainian troops have liberated the city of Kherson on a historic night for the home forces. The army was greeted by crowds of residents waving blue and yellow flags.
Yes, the retreat represents a huge setback for Moscow, marking the largest defeat for the invading Russians since they were forced back from Kiev. That was in April.
Now let's talk to the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who's here once again. Robert, thank you. What are we to make of this? How significant is this militarily and strategically?
Well, Reuters, I'm a great admirer, came up with an amazing statistic. With the Ukraine forces moving into Kherson, the Ukraine forces since March have taken back more than half the total territory that Russia took in the first 4 weeks of the invasion. That, I'm sorry to say, for Moscow, the Moscow propaganda machine, is a real setback, because it means if they're going to go on with this, and this is going to be the real test for Moscow, they've got to reset totally, they've got to raise yet another army, and we've heard about how the recruiting has been going on there, and are they really going to plough them through the mud of the winter? And, and of course the Ukrainians, they're stretched too, but they're well prepared for this, because what we're seeing with the 4 key Ukrainian generals is that they're preparing the agenda forward all the time. And the Russians are playing catch-up, as they quite clearly had to do in getting those troops out of from the west bank of the Dnipro, in Kherson. So it is a big thing, and you can see it. You can see in the pictures of these people that stayed behind, poor souls, and had a pretty bad time by all accounts that I'm reading from the blogs. And they are genuinely relieved.
But these are the people that Putin was saying would welcome Russians with open arms. He must have thought that was true, to even think this was going to go.
We know he is in a world of his own. He sees very, very few people, and there are rumours swishing around Moscow and Petersburg that he really just sees his priest confessor more than he sees anybody else at the moment. But that's a lovely sort of, I suspect that's from Kiev Disinformation Central as well, but it's a pretty good one. But Russia is pretty desperate now because they're playing around yet again. I was reading before coming in here about, are we going to go on allowing the grain exports? Well, stopping the grain exports does Russia and furthermore China's interest a lot of damage, because they hit the people that they really want to keep on board, namely dependent nations that have been loyal to them even in the UN, in the deprived parts of the world, particularly in Africa and in parts of the Pacific. If they're saying, we're going to hold it up again, no more grain, no more maize, no more sunflower oil or whatever, it is that crucial supply that Ukraine its exports have gone to, and Russian too, from the black soil areas around that. So can we say that the Ukrainians still seem to me to be thinking strategically? A chess moves 3 or 4 ahead, and Russia is thinking tactically. And the thing that is most on the line at the moment is Russian pride. And a lot of people are suffering and are being sacrificed. 100,000 dead, missing, injured, very likely captured.
So
an awful lot.
How is Putin playing that at home then?
Well, he doesn't. He relies on the old boys brigade that, from KGB times, from the FSB, the successor, the securitocracy, as it's known. And this is going to be the real test. And the real test is this. If they go on recruiting, yes, they've called up 300,000. They said, we've done better than that. We've actually got 318,000 coming to the colours. The regional governors have been kicking off quite a bit and saying, we didn't ask for this, and you're asking for us to pay for it, to pay for their barracks, to pay for their food, and there's not much of it, and we haven't got the money.
And to pay for it in lives as well.
That's right.
What about the worry you were mentioning earlier that Putin will just go to Iran and do some sort of weird deal with Iran?
Well, he's doing it already. Sorry, and he's a repeat offender because, as I said, they had the second go at the beginning of this week. Not only give us more drones, but give us more surface-to-surface missiles, things to really knock out the infrastructure. That means heat, gas, and water. Water is going to be critical through the winter, because that's one thing, again, if the Ukrainians can move out, and it's difficult, east from Kherson, they can start threatening Crimea. If you look at the chessboard or the game of Risk now, and it really does look like Crimea is coming into play more and more. The Ukrainians have spotted this, have spotted the weakness there. They've sent in these underwater and surface water drones. I think with a little bit of advice from our friends somewhere in the UK, possibly because they're very good at that. And I think that they've got a bit of an initiative there. Because strategically, I mean, we use these grand adverbs, but the fact is that at the very beginning, when they said, we'll take Kiev and we'll shut Ukraine off from the Black Sea coast, no. They have got two major hubs still, and they are now secure because of how so. Mykolaiv, which is the big dockyard where you build ships, where you service ships, very important, and the port of Odessa itself, and the two key commercial ports around it, which are the centre of grain export. That is secure. Unfortunately, a pessimist will say this means the war goes on well into 2023. And that's where Kiev is most worried. NATO, EU, US, Canada, very important. Australia. Please stick with us on this. We're going to get through.
Don't get weary of
yeah.
But where does this leave Putin then? Because whatever Putin believes himself and whatever is being fed to the good people of Russia through the sort of tainted media that way, there've got to be people in the services, the generals who actually really understand what is going on here. At what point can they pull the plug?
Well, that is the question. Actually, that is the big journalistic news story of the moment, is that what happens to him, because he's built up this fortress of security apparatus to keep himself in power, which they didn't spot from the early noughties, when he really came to power, 2001, 2002, really established himself, that he was establishing himself in power for life. He was more than a czar. And the thing is, as his tsardom goes on, it looks actually to the outside world, and must do, to a really intelligent, and the bags of them around, and they're saying bits and pieces, but keeping stum for now, intelligent people in the areas of Petersburg and Moscow. Vladimir, doesn't it all look a bit bonkers? Blood, treasure, we're shut off from the world, we need to trade. Even our faithful supporters in the UN, from Africa, from Asia, are not so keen now. And we're dependent on Iran, which will want more and more from us, in help with their nuclear program. And do we really, Russia, want to see a nuclear-armed Iran? It is an Alice in Wonderland, sort of where, everybody's a winner and everybody's a loser.
We know what happened to the last Tsar.
Yeah. Well, indeed. Robert, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
As always. Some interesting lines coming through on the economy, right, which has just got me thinking about talking the economy down and things. Steve says, stop talking us into recession. We're still far better off than most of Europe, which is true. Interesting. Mike, who was just in before, when he was leaving the studio, was saying to me, this whole you're saying that the Bank of England has forecast the longest recession ever. He says it's not true. They haven't forecast that. They've given out various projections, a bit like when you do savings, say you could earn this, you could earn that, but it's probably somewhere in the middle. They haven't actually forecasted it, but the Bank of England don't mind people saying they've forecast that because it frightens people into spending less money, which is therefore good for inflation. But they haven't actually said that. Which is interesting, isn't it?
Yes, and I do think talk plays a big part in it. I think you can talk yourself up, into a depression, can't you? Which a recession is nationally, or you can talk yourself out of it. And I do think, using phrases. I get this every day when I go out and meet people. Using phrases like eating.
Heat and eat.
Heat and eat, yeah. Heating versus eating. Very inflammatory, actually.
Yeah, well, Colin actually makes that very point. Colin in Durham, it says, I must say, terms being used by the media to describe what may come is catastrophising, heat or eat crisis and so on. I think a lot of this talk is negative.
Mind you, I think a lot of the talk coming out of number 10 Downing Street is very, very negative, and that's where I think they should have a look at that. Not to say that we just want, it all to be whitewashed, but there are different ways of phrasing things and maybe occasionally telling us why they're taking the decisions they're taking and trying to rationalise that would make us all understand a bit better.
And if there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, which is something to aim for. Anyway, let us know what you think, gbviews@gbnews.uk, but don't go anywhere because we've got all the papers heading your way in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
It is 8:39. Very good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Should we take a look through the newspapers? And we're joined by Mariana Hotter and Kevin Schofield, political editor of HuffPost UK. Lovely to see you again.
Hello.
Well, we've managed to avoid the subject so far this morning, but now we can't because Kevin's chosen it to talk about in the Sun, Matt Hancock's excruciating endurance in the jungle.
Yeah, I mean, to the surprise of absolutely no one at all, he got chosen and probably will get chosen for every possible
And this is because the
trial.
public choose
The
who's
public
going to be...
choose who it is, so he's just getting it in the neck, I think, every single time. But, I mean, what I was thinking was, you know, he said that he is looking for forgiveness That's what he's saying. I think he means
Forgiveness for what?
For cheating on his wife,
that's
to be caught, and he resigned for that. But I just think there must be easier ways to go about absolution than
yeah, but
going
maybe
on.
not easier ways than earning allegedly 400 grand.
Probably less lucrative ways, certainly,
Yeah.
of seeking forgiveness. But I just think, you know, why is he
put
putting
yourself
himself through that? I mean, obviously he is getting paid an awful lot of money if the reports are true, but I just think any reputation that the guy had has been absolutely shot to bits. But we were discussing it earlier, it's like, well, what has he accepted now that his political career is over?
Well, he must have.
And is now just looking for the next chapter, which might be, you know, as some sort of celebrity, but I don't know.
It's not celebrity material, that's the thing, is he?
I don't think so, but I think he maybe lacks the self-awareness to actually realise that.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, he's been humiliated on a nightly basis, criticised by his campmates who are very angry about COVID and the government's handling of the pandemic, and you just think, really, is it really worth it?
What do you think, Marianne?
He's a serving MP, and I think he had the party whip withdrawn, which means that he's not a Conservative MP. He's currently an independent MP, but he's still an MP for his constituency. And I think if I were his constituent, I would be absolutely fuming that he's on TV in Australia rather than doing the work that he's being paid to do by us, the taxpayers.
They've done it before, serving MPs, of course.
They shouldn't ever do it.
Nadine Dorris did it, and Penny Mordaunt did that diving one, didn't she?
Yeah, but that was Flash. But I guess that didn't involve her being away from Britain on the other side of the planet.
Well, any of. I mean, I just don't think you should. They've got a serious, proper job. Do it.
We're in the cost of living crisis. You know, we're in.
Hey, we're agreeing on something,
aren't we? Isn't that lovely?
It had to happen eventually. So I'm glad I was here to witness it.
Also, I think I'm a Celebrity is an absolutely disgusting programme that is absolutely full of animal abuse that we just somehow blithely ignore.
Well, they claim they would defend themselves against a charge of animal abuse.
Well,
they have all
would.
sorts of care officers on standby, and the bits that people eat are no longer live. I think they are.
No,
they are dead.
I'm glad to hear it.
Have been contestants on the show, and they say, "Oh yeah, when you're in the coffin thing and you're squirming about trying to do the task, of course you're killing the animals that crawl under you," and they're absolutely terrified. The bottom line is, if you wouldn't do that and watch someone doing that with dogs or cats or kittens or puppies, being terrified, and they either die or are injured in the trial, or they die of shock and stress afterwards, then we shouldn't be doing it to rats and snakes and all the other things.
To be fair,
I think it's just disgusting.
To be fair, I just think, you know, watching someone eat a cow's bottom for entertainment is
gross. What does it say about you if you enjoy watching it?
I mean, I just think that.
Kevin watches it. Why do you watch it, Kevin?
Our kids love it. I'm blaming the kids.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm going all woke or anything, but it's just like, is it good for the kids to be saying, oh, I mean, the stuff he was eating last night.
Bad parent.
A terrible parent.
Fish eyes.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't
we didn't watch it with him last night,
all aspects of private part.
Well,
I agree with you
so
there.
much of a problem with that. It's more this kind of notion that it's like acceptable bullying.
Yes, it is.
Because everyone gangs up and goes, yeah, let's make them do that horrible torturous thing. Ha, 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 ha. What? Like, that's not what I
Although
want to teach.
they know what they're
the
signing up to as well. I mean, the contestants know what and they're very well paid for it, so...
It's ritual humiliation for which they're being paid.
Yeah, ritual humiliation and bullying. I'm like, no, I'm out. Cool.
No, I think it's weird.
Very.
Maybe we're just not on trend, though, but I don't mind not being on trend.
I'll pass on your feedback to my children, though.
Yeah.
I will pass on.
I think maybe if you're watching it, you should also have like a serious conversation about appropriate behaviour and being kind to each other.
Let's
go down a track.
Marriage in the Times, Marianne.
Yeah, speaking of consent, this is research by the think tank Civitas, who reckon that based on a kind of an exponential decay curve, by 2062, annual marriage rates will have fallen by more than 70% compared to what they are today. And today, this really surprised me, their marriage rates are only one couple for every 100 adults that are getting married.
What, the rest, is that
So some people are single, but lots of other people are cohabiting, but not getting married.
No,
and when
no
you look at the when you look at the socio-economic breakdown, far more wealthier people get married rather than people who are poorer. And the argument is the reason to kind of promote marriage is that you have more financial security because of the laws that we have. Also that...
Well, part of the thing, there's a huge pressure to have these great big weddings, isn't there? As if that marriage is about the wedding day.
Whereas actually it's about the commitment to the other person. Now, it has to be said, you can be entirely committed to your partner without getting married. It's not for everyone. And I think, personally, we should have sort of tax breaks and things like that that support couples and families to stay together rather than just marriage. But call it what you will. I mean, one of the people they quote here sort of says, oh, well, you know, it's been 10 years since a cabinet minister made a speech on marriage and why it matters. And I thought, that's slightly not with the times, because I don't want some kind of Jeremy Hunt to stand up and tell me to get married.
Absolutely.
Shut up, you.
No.
Anyway, so there you go. And also, women do better on cheating. They report being happier after they've cheated if they're the person who's doing the adultering, whereas men tend to report being less happy after.
They should be less happy.
Riddle me that.
They should be miserable if you've done that.
I mean, everyone should be. Yeah, probably.
But then again, I have just got married.
Yes,
so my view is slightly tainted.
Which is good. I think it should be for the moment.
Honeymoon glow.
Look, while we're talking about the cost of living hitting marriages and things like that, Santa's Grotto is being...
Yeah, I think this is really terrible. Fewer Santa's Grottos are opening now because of the cost of living crisis, well, because of the energy crisis. Basically, the cost of running the grottos with all the lights, I imagine, and heating them, etc. Now, the grottos obviously stopped because of the pandemic, so they're only just getting going again. So a lot of kids have never experienced a grotto, which I think is a great part of growing up, or taking your own kids to it. But yeah,
it's like somebody else's. Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, that would be weird. yeah. I wouldn't advise that. No. That would definitely be strange. But yeah, I mean, so there's a garden centre here in Cornwall. It's put its grotto on ice. Clever. After calculating, it would have cost £20,000. £20,000 to run it. So there's no money to be made in it. But there's another one in Blackpool was cancelled. But there was another woman who runs a farm, and she put her prices up to try and cover the costs and got absolutely dog's abuse for it. So she said, well, what's the point? And she explained to people it's not profiteering, it's because it's just to cover our overheads. But people just don't want to pay it. Well, so I think it's a lovely part of growing up.
You could do an outdoor one, couldn't you? Just have a couple of reindeer and a bit of fake snow. That wouldn't cost 20 grand.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be quite as festive.
No, it might not be.
Oh well, let us know what you think.
It's at the end of the road for Santa's Grotto.
It's the end of the road for you two.
Righto.
You're done.
Yeah.
But thank you very much indeed, Mary-Anne and Kevin. Thank you very much. But now to matters.
We're going to talk space.
Oh, yes, please.
It's our favourite subject.
It is, yes.
And this is fascinating. This is about an overweight neutron star has been observed by astronomers who say it defies the black hole theory.
Now, it was produced by the merger of two smaller neutron stars, which usually results into the star collapsing into a black hole.
Yeah, that's what we always thought.
Singularity.
Oh, yes, and event horizons and things like that.
Yes.
We're joined now by space and planetary scientist, our favourite, Andy Lound. And a very good morning, Andy.
Good morning to you both.
What's going on?
Yeah, tell us what's going on, because we don't quite understand this.
Well, it's quite exciting because we had what was called the brightest flash we've ever received from a gamma ray burst, which is a burst of gamma radiation which races across the universe. And this usually occurs when a neutron star collapses into a black hole. Now, a neutron star is the core of a very large giant star, something that could be up to 20 masses the size of the sun, so much bigger than our own sun. And when it's burned up its hydrogen, it starts then to collapse in on itself. But the mass of it is so great, it starts to burn up also the outer atmosphere of itself and starts to fuse the outer atmosphere, creating the heavy materials. And eventually it starts to totally collapsing onto the actual dense core itself, blowing out its outer atmosphere and forming a full neutron star, which is the core of the original star itself. Now, this can only be up to 12 miles across, but it's staggeringly dense of material. 1 teaspoon of this could weigh something like 3 billion tons, to give you an idea. Strong magnetic fields are surrounding it. Now, some of these neutron stars just shine and burn, and they also push out a pulse of light because they rotate incredibly quickly. And they're called pulsars, and they were first discovered by Jocelyn Bell from Britain in 1967, so it's a very important discovery. But they can then continue to collapse in on themselves, and when they do, they form a black hole. That's because the gravity is so strong, light itself can't escape. And when that happens, it's believed there is a burst of gamma rays, which we call the GRB. However, this observation that was made is very different. It appears that 2 neutron stars collided with each other. That's fine. But the gravity should have been so powerful, they should have instantly become a black hole. This didn't happen because the observation of the gamma ray burst didn't last a fraction of a second or a few seconds. It lasted a day, and we're still seeing the afterglow of it now. That's not possible. Because the gravity was so powerful, they should have collapsed instantly. So what held them in place? What kept them going? And what we think was happening was because when they merged, the rotation speed was so fast, it balanced off the collapsing of the star through gravity, in the same way that water sticks to the outside of a bucket when you whiz it over your head, centrifugal effect. So you had these forces tying with each other until eventually it gave way and the star fully collapsed. But that's the beautiful moment we've had, because then we had the burst of this gamma ray burst, and shot right across the space, about 2.4 billion miles away, 2.4 billion light years, I should say, away. So this happened 2.4 billion years ago. And because it held it up so powerfully, then the shockwave happened, has told us something important. It shows us that the gamma ray burst doesn't occur from the black hole immediately forming. The gamma ray burst happens just before the black hole forms and is an effect of the neutron star collapsing rather than the formation of the black hole itself. Incredibly, at 2.4 billion light years away, this hit the Earth and still interrupted our ionosphere. It actually started to interact with it. Nothing too serious, of course, detected by all sorts of equipment on the ground, affected radio waves travelling through the ionosphere, but generally speaking, we were okay. But it gave us a warning, of course, that something like this happening very close to us would be quite dangerous. And it's thought that at least one of the mass extinctions we have on our planet could have been caused by a close-hand gamma ray burst.
Wow. Wow, it's just amazing. When you talk about, this incredible centrifugal effect, how fast, bear in mind that our planet obviously spins on its axis once every 24 hours. How fast are these rotating?
This neutron star could have been rotating, several times a second, so it's very, very fast indeed. Because obviously, if you have a star many times the size physically of the sun rotating at a particular rate, as soon as you crush it down, it sort of spins faster. In the same way a skater pulls their arms in when they're rotating on the ice. It's that sort of effect on it. This is much on a more massive scale. So these things are rotating at phenomenal speed. And that was just balancing off the crushing effect, this collapsing effect, which is something we haven't observed before. And because the burst lasted for so long, we're able to observe it, not just the gamma rays, of course, we're able to examine it in different wavelengths of light with different pieces of equipment and give us a bigger picture of how neutron stars collapse, what they're constructed of, and of course how black holes actually form, which it's a golden opportunity, perhaps one in a century, perhaps one in a millennial event we've actually been able to observe.
Andy, is this something the James Webb Telescope saw, or is it just ordinary telescopes on the Earth?
X-ray and gamma-ray telescopes, which are up there. The Swift Observatory, of course, is orbiting the Earth, deliberately looking for these objects. Many satellites detected this. These were first actually detected by American satellites, which was designed to detect nuclear explosions on the Earth and things like that. And they actually accidentally picked up these gamma-ray bursts from space. And then, of course, when Jocelyn Bell discovered the pulsars in 1967, he started to bring all the information together. But this was observed by a whole range range of telescopes, and in fact the Webb telescope will be pointed in that general direction to have a look in that area of space. I mean, bearing in mind it's relatively close at 2.4 billion light years, it's going to be something that James Webb could pick up the after effects of this explosion. And of course, if the black hole is actually forming, we'll actually detect the ring of material surrounding the black hole, which is the only visible thing we can see of a black hole.
Yeah, OK. Andy, really good to talk to you this morning. I love the way you just bring it all to life.
Absolutely,
Thank you
brilliant.
very much indeed.
Thank you, Sophie.
Very exciting.
So much. Lots more to talk about in the next hour. Join us in a few moments.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. The weekend has started mild and it will continue that way. Not as windy out there today compared to the last couple of days, and there is some fog around, dense fog in a few spots too. This is the big picture: high pressure to the east, low to the west, and we're kind of in between, with this weather front straddling across central areas, pushing northwards through the day. So a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern and central Scotland, but that rain is going to edge its way clear. There is some fog around that may take a few hours to clear, and for some it could just stay grey all day, particularly parts of northeast England and northern Scotland. But for most of us, it is going to brighten up through the day, and we'll see some spells of sunshine. Still a bit breezy in the west, but not as windy as yesterday. It is still very mild. With a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting up into the high teens perhaps, and even where it's grey, we'll see temperatures into the teens. This evening, it stays largely dry and fine, but it could turn quite misty again quite quickly, especially over central and eastern parts of England. Some dense patches of fog are possible that, again, could linger for much of Sunday. Still a bit breezy in the west, keeping skies a little clear here, and again, for most, it is going to be a very mild night, with most towns and cities staying in double digits. The details for Sunday, well, again, likely to start pretty drab, misty, murky, even foggy. That mist and fog will take a while to clear over eastern counties of England. Some will stay gloomy all day. Further west, a weather front will eventually bring some rain into the west of Northern Ireland, although I suspect Belfast will stay dry until dusk. Elsewhere tomorrow, most places, again, seeing some sunny spells, and it is going to be mild, even where it's cloudy, 13 or 14, with some sunshine. Temperatures, again, getting into the high teens. Could be quite foggy for Monday morning's commute, but we will see a change through next week, turning wet on Tuesday, turning less warm, but still around average.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister delays growth plans as the UK heads towards a recession.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 12th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, we're on your radio, and we're online. So wherever you are and whatever you're up to, you can take us out and about with you today. These are your top stories.
Well, Rishi Sunak has shelved a flagship policy meant to boost Britain's economy, prompting fears that next week's autumn budget won't be enough to stimulate growth. Bank of England has also warned the UK could be on course for the longest recession on record.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced the Russian army has been pushed out of the southern city of Kherson in a historic moment for his forces. Russia's defence ministry announced that they've been forced to withdraw more than 30,000 troops in Moscow's biggest setback so far.
And heartbreak for England as the Red Roses lose the Rugby World Cup to the hosts, New Zealand. It went right down to the wire, but sadly the team couldn't pull it off. We'll have all the reaction to that in this coming hour.
And loads of you getting in touch about loads of stuff, actually, and including some more positive stuff as well, so we'll run through some of those. If you want to join in the conversation, you know how to do it. gbviews at gbnews.uk.
It's sad about the rugby, isn't it? I mean, we were so close. Did very well.
And yet so far.
Yes, well, that's true. When you don't win, you don't win.
Close but no cigar.
If you don't, if you don't win, you're the loser, aren't you? That's a shame. But they've done so well.
Anyway, onwards and upwards. To our main news this morning, the Prime Minister is set to delay his flagship growth policy of cutting taxes on business investments, adding to fears that the autumn statement won't be enough to stimulate growth.
Yeah, what is going to be in it, though? He's also preparing to cut defence spending, allegedly, in real terms, as inflation soars.
But meanwhile, senior Tories are urging the Chancellor not to go too far on tax rises, as they say it could risk prolonging the economic recession if we go into one, which is likely.
So for more, let's talk to GB News political reporter Catherine Foster. It's almost impossible to know where to start, isn't it? Where would you start? I'll leave it up to you. What will you tackle first?
It's an incredibly difficult balancing act that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are trying to find, isn't it? Between, on the one hand, making sure that the markets, the international community think, yes, they've got a grip of this, they've got a plan to deal with inflation, they've got a plan to deal with debt, we can trust them to lend, they know what they're doing, and at the same time not stifling any potential growth by, instead of what Liz Truss had planned to do with Kwasi Kwarteng, tax cuts, stimulating the economy. They still want growth. We still need growth desperately, don't we? Because the economy productivity has flatlined, hasn't it, really, since the financial crisis. So, but they are planning large tax rises, cuts to public spending, to be seen to be credible. But what effect is that going to have on businesses at a time when inflation is rising, budgets are squeezed, and everybody really is feeling the pinch?
But is there a sense in all of this, do we and again, a lot of the problem with this is it's guesswork at this stage, isn't it? Because we're not going to know till the 17th when all this comes out. But is there a sense that he's saying, right, knuckle down now, we'll flatline for 6 months and then look at what we can do. Once we've sort of filled that black hole in a bit, we'll then see what we can do to stimulate growth.
I think so, and certainly the growth plan that we're hearing this morning in The Independent has currently been shelved. There's hopes that they will be able to bring that in the spring. So I think the message is really tough times now, but let's double down and better things will emerge down the line. The problem is, of course, that nobody knows, and not even economists, because, of course, economists often get these things spectacularly wrong too. Nobody really knows how long this downturn is going to go on. The Bank of England are making all these doom and gloom forecasts. We don't know. And that in itself, you hear that there's going to be a recession, you stop spending, you worry about your jobs, has an effect, doesn't it? So the government will hope that in taking tough decisions now, by the time that the next election rolls around in a couple of years, things will have turned the corner, things will be improving, they'll be able to cut taxes. But we don't know that. And I think what we can certainly say is that if things are not getting better, the government will be blamed.
It's interesting. Stephen said it's a bit of guesswork knowing what they're planning for the autumn statement. You just wonder as well whether it's a bit of guesswork even when they're meeting around the cabinet table trying to decide what to do.
You do, don't you?
I mean, there must be so many different opinions. How will they ever decide where to go and what to do? They're clearly taking the temperature of us by leaking all these different stories almost every day, aren't they?
Yes, and I think obviously we will know on Thursday when we know officially, but I think what is very clear is that although they're not going to be raising headline rates of tax, a lot of us are going to be paying a lot more in tax because of these freezes to tax thresholds. So taxes are most certainly going up, even if they can say, oh, well, we haven't raised the income tax rate or whatever. I mean, the Institute for Fiscal Studies was saying if they keep with all these threshold freezes for another 2 years, it's effectively like putting 5p on the basic rate of tax. Can you imagine the uproar if they did that?
But that's stealth tax, isn't it? But in a way, that's not a bad thing, is it? In that it raises taxes without us all throwing our toys out the pram.
Yeah, and it may be necessary, but I mean, some potential good news. If you're a pensioner, if you're on benefits, it does sound like they will be protected. The triple lock will stay. Benefits will rise with inflation, and the government are very, very keen to make sure that the pain is spread, and that middle, higher earners feel more of it than people at the bottom, and that the people at the bottom are looked after.
So it is going to squeeze the middle earners, isn't it? This is where this budget is going to be targeted.
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly.
It's interesting when you talk to. I mean, we're talking to Labour politicians every day because they're very keen to come on GB News, which is great.
Yeah, it is.
But what they don't tell us is actually what their plan would be. It's all well and good now, especially. You can get away with that in opposition to an extent, but they also say, we want a general election now. But if you want a general election now, what would you do that's any different? And we're not getting those answers, are we?
Yes, I mean, the Labour Party are going to come under a lot more scrutiny now, aren't they? Because as they are increasingly seen as a government in waiting, it's simply not going to be acceptable to say, well, let's wait and see, let's wait and see. Also, I would challenge them saying that they want a general election now. Of course, they would say that. They have to say that. But really, who in their right mind would want to be in charge now? Because things are difficult in the UK.
For any government.
But I mean, around the world, and whoever is in charge is going to be blamed by voters. So whilst it suits Labour to say, let's have a general election, I think if that were to transpire, they'd probably be
run a mile.
Horrified at the moment, although they would probably win.
Absolutely. It's interesting we've been talking about the fact that, the Bank of England comes out with these doomy, gloomy statements about how we're going to be in the longest recession ever known. Great. And whether it's better if we try and talk things up. Sarah has been in touch. Hi, Sarah. I was sat in the hairdressers yesterday. A young woman was sat next to me who had recently bought her first home. She was telling the girls that she was going to buy everything new Christmas tree, new decorations, new everything. I was also out then buying some local Christmas presents. People were not depressed and unhappy looking. People are living their lives and getting on with things and hopefully ignoring the media and even Number 10 with their preemptive negative messaging. We need to be very careful we don't talk ourselves into gloom and doom.
It's a fair point, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, we are sitting here, aren't we? And every day we are discussing all these horrors that may be about to be visited on us, but people do still have to go and live their lives. They have to buy food, they have to put... Well, actually, haven't put the heating on yet. But, yes, there is a risk, isn't there, that you get into this sort of doom spiral.
Don't you think somebody should tell Number 10 that? That, yes, they've got a hard job to do, and yes, the autumn statement is probably going to be pretty negative for most of us, but they should be wrapping it up in a nice Christmas bow or something. I don't know.
Are they deliberately making it sound really, really awful so that on Thursday, when it's marginally less awful, that we all think, actually, it's not so bad? But, I mean, that's quite a dangerous game in a way, isn't it? Because some people really will be panicking now.
Yeah, and it's a bit like Liz Truss saying, I don't care if this makes me unpopular. Well, how did that turn out for you, Liz?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And Catherine, thank you. We shall no doubt be getting lots of analysis from you in the coming weeks. Look forward to Thursday. Or not, I don't know.
Well, no, maybe not.
Interestingly, I'm afraid I've got some distressing news to report.
Oh.
My Auntie Brenda's been in touch.
Oh.
Because my cousin, Sarah, lives in New Zealand now. She's gone out there for a few years. She's coming back eventually. But anyway, she's been at the Rugby World Cup final.
Yes.
She was at the match.
Wow.
And she sent me a picture of Sarah with her top on, and she's wearing a Black Ferns top, not an England top.
No. Oh, well, there you go.
So she's been
but she lives in New Zealand.
She lives in New Zealand, so she's
Fair
been
enough.
fully converted to the Black Ferns.
Yeah,
there
and
you go.
if you've just tuned in, we didn't win. We nearly did, but we didn't in the end.
So, you know, sad for us. If you're Sarah Robert Shaw, you're delighted. There you go. Well, you got to...
Well, congratulations to the Kiwis. They obviously deserved it.
Yeah. I sort of think it's quite nice if she's... I can understand. They love it out there, you know.
What, rugby? Generally?
No. My cousin and her fiancé love New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the pictures that
it is one of the most beautiful places on earth.
It
really is.
Stunning.
Ravishing miles and miles and miles of rolling green fields, and huge mountains, all with snow on top, and lakes at the bottom that you can swim in. And it is a fabulous place, but it's a long way to go.
Yeah, still, I wouldn't mind going. I quite fancy it actually.
And they're very big because they've always have been obviously such a farming industry is so important that when you go and you order, if you go to the restaurant and you order a steak, the steak is bigger than the plate. And lashings of butter on absolutely everything. You come away thinking, ooh, they really do believe in their dairy, but it is a wonderful place.
It's where they filmed The Hobbit, isn't it?
That's
and all
right,
that sort of
yes.
thing.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, yes.
Very nice too. One day I shall get out there. It's 12 minutes past 9. Let's bring you up to date with the other headlines. And the government has given councils another £13.5 million to help them stop landlords who are exploiting the supported housing system. Currently, housing providers who profit from benefit claims but don't properly support vulnerable tenants can be fined £30,000. The new funding will help councils step up inspections and carry out better scrutiny of housing benefit claims.
The Met Police Commissioner has warned public sector strikes could hinder crime fighting. Sir Mark Rowley says it's because of an overflow of work for officers. Speaking to The Telegraph, he also says only 22% of calls to the Met Police relate to crime.
And the royal family will attend the annual Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall this evening. The event will commemorate the country's war dead and mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. It's also going to pay tribute, not surprisingly, to Queen Elizabeth for her service to the country and to the armed forces. Well, remembrance ceremonies are taking place right across Britain this weekend in honour of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in defence of their country.
And at 11 o'clock yesterday, a 2-minute silence marked the ending of the First World War, of course, when guns stopped firing, whilst paying tribute to those who've served in conflicts ever since, too.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joined the British Army at Kendrew Barracks in Rutland for their service yesterday and talked to them ahead of Remembrance Sunday tomorrow.
A sound so familiar to the British Army, yet it's the silence that follows that matters most. At the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, we remember them. Lieutenant Ashwell is with the Royal Anglians.
So we are at Kendrew Barracks in Cottesmore, Rutland. All of the service personnel on the camp are coming together with the primary school that is also on camp, and we're coming together to take part in an act of remembrance.
For more than a century, Britain has honoured those who've died in conflicts through remembrance. What began as a way to mark armistice and the end of the Great War now highlights all sacrifice made by the armed forces.
The importance of today is to remember those who have fallen before us, those who've died in the world wars, in the Korean War, in conflicts in the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq, and also those who've died out of conflict, to remember them, their families and friends.
In the heart of Rutland, Kendrew Barracks is home to the Army's serving men and women, and often their families. With the school on site, the children at Cottesmore Academy learn of remembrance young.
Virtually all of our children have a parent who is serving in the armed forces. Some children will even have both parents serving in the armed forces. So it's particularly important that we are part of today.
From our biggest cities to our national memorials. For many, remembrance gives time to think of friends and family who've served in the armed forces. For Private Liam Williams back at Kendrew, that's his great-grandparents.
It's an absolute honour to be able to serve in the British Army. Remembrance Day is a big standing point for me. On both sides of my family, great-grandfathers went off to fight in the Second World War. And it really means a lot, and I believe it means a lot to a lot of other people in the unit.
As the British Army moves further forward into the 21st century, Reverend Tom Wilde reminds us how remembrance serves to connect all in the forces.
The people living on this camp, there's an absolute multitude of different nations, different regiments, different cap badges, and all with their own history of conflict and service. And when we remember, what we're allowing people to do is to remember those who these regiments have lost.
The silence observed may be short, but as we look ahead to Remembrance Sunday, the sacrifice it is in place of is beyond words. Will Hollis for GB News in Rutland.
It's nice to see children getting involved.
It is,
actually.
isn't it? It's good
I was driving
they
home.
will have been taught all about it, which is important.
I was driving home yesterday, but I managed to pull in at 11 o'clock and just spend a moment. I think you should do, shouldn't you?
Yes, you should. Of course you should.
Right
and what I love
to do.
about tomorrow as well is the cenotaph ceremony, because everybody turns out and marches past. And like I was saying earlier, you know, every face has got a story to tell. You can't take your eyes off it, really. It's brilliant.
No, and it'll be nice to see. I know, obviously, Charles has done it before, standing in for his mother, but you know, to be doing it in his own right.
Gosh, yes.
There, I think, is something to mark and to celebrate. Actually, as he continues that tradition and that respect.
You'll know this better than me, actually, although I haven't asked mine. That if you were serving up until now, you're a serving soldier or whatever. You were serving for the Queen and country.
Yes.
When it suddenly did change and became for King and country, was there any formal recognition of that, or has everybody just taken that aboard?
No, I think you just take it on board because the oath that you swear is to serve the sovereign and their successors.
I see. Oh, right.
So you don't have to swear a new oath of allegiance, whatever. It's all in. They've pre-planned.
They've thought of that already for many centuries.
But I think it's quite nice that they, you know, for those who are serving now, to think that they have served two monarchs.
Yes.
I think there's a bit of pride in that, actually.
Oh, there will be. A lot of tears as well, I would have thought.
Anyway, look, don't go anywhere. We've got lots more coming up for you, including cosmetic surgery. Something to shout about, or should you keep it to yourself?
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart. And I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
What?
I wish I could, and we can't tell you what we're talking about.
Oh, that's not fair.
You just made me laugh. Just about dental work and things. Just made me laugh. Dear me.
Well, we are talking about cosmetic surgery.
Well, we are,
next, aren't we?
But does that include? Does that include dental work and hair transplants and all that sort of thing?
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh, well, I'm guilty.
It's basically sort of volunteering for anything that's going to improve your looks. And therefore, probably also your self-esteem, your confidence, your ability to do your job, things like that. We were talking, this is how we got onto it in the break. We were talking about the fact that more and more people are wanting dental, enhancement.
Yes.
Because the Americans do that so well, don't they? We interview, time and again, you interview celebrities from America whose teeth are perfection. Absolute perfection. And then you go to a Brit and their teeth are all over the place. Some of the richest, most celebrity Brits, they've not bothered to look at their teeth at all. And why is that? And don't you think maybe that's something we Brits should address?
We have an international reputation for bad teeth.
Yeah. Jokes are told against us all over the planet.
But what about boobs?
Well, this is interesting because it's the front page of the Daily Mail and in other papers as well. Angela Rayner, Deputy Labour leader, thank you. I keep wanting to say Prime Minister there.
No, not yet.
Certainly isn't. No, she would like to be. But we all know Angela Rayner, she of the absolutely beautiful hair, no matter what your political thoughts are, she does have that. She has said that when she was 30, which is 12 years ago, and she'd just gotten over having her children, and she had a lot of weight to lose. She said she was 17 stone at the time. She lost 6. And she was so... It is a lot. She was so pleased with having done that, that she started to look at her body differently, a lot more critically, and she thought she needed a boob job. So at age 30, when she didn't have enough money, really, she took out a bank loan for £5,600 and had a boob job. And she's talked about it in the newspapers.
Now, you see, is that over the top? Is that being self-indulgent or not? And if I can quote her... Brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
She said after the weight loss, her boobs looked like 2 boiled eggs in socks.
Well, I can sort of understand that. And if that's true, if anything like it was true, she must have looked in the mirror and thought, I want to do something about it.
I've done all this work to lose the weight, and now I want everything else to look perkier.
That's the word, yes.
Well,
but there's no doubt it would perk her sense of self-confidence, and that's why she did it. And I don't blame her for speaking out about it. I think that's quite important. I wonder what you think. Shall we talk to psychologist Jo Hemmings? Hi there, Jo.
Oh,
no,
she's coming up. She's just building up her self-confidence to talk to us.
Absolutely, we'll try and find her.
But in all of that, because I tell you what's interesting, and I hadn't even really thought about it, but I had a hair transplant.
Yes, you did, didn't you?
Which I never thought of as cosmetic surgery, to be honest. And I only had a bit... I had a widow's peak, so it was going back at the top here. So these are sort of filled in.
It's very impressive, I must say.
But you see, when I look back, I didn't really think too much about it at the time, but when I look back at pictures from 3 or 4 years ago, and I think, ooh...
No, you made the right decision. But,
I look better now.
But what you also did is you continued to appear on screen while it was still in its very early stages, and you weren't ashamed to talk about it either.
No, because...
So you've done the same sort of thing.
The same sort of thing, because that's just that you shouldn't... If you're going to do it, don't be embarrassed about it. That's what I sort of think. Anyway, Jo Hemmings, we've got her now. Morning, Jo.
Morning. I'm not sure what happened to me then.
Not to worry. What do you make of all of this? People just boosting their confidence?
Well, I agree with Anne, really. I think it's a good thing. Like, obviously, everything in moderation. You know, you don't want to get to the kind of body or facial dysmorphia stage where you have so much done that you're depending on it to boost your confidence, because that sort of tends to be going the other direction. It's a negative thing. But I do think, actually, when you lose a lot of weight, for example, it doesn't always go off in the areas that you want it to. So I totally get her description of what went on with her boobs and why she had it done. And it's the essence of a woman. It does make you feel more confident. And again, you know, individuals who, if they tell you about it, and obviously if you're having a major facelift on your teeth, people will spot it. But if it's something lower down or under clothes, you don't have to tell people. But I don't think there's any shame in it. So I think the fact she was very candid about having her surgery is highly relatable. I think a lot of women will say, yeah, you know, that happened to me when I lost a lot of weight.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing particularly wrong in it. I suppose most people watching at the moment say there's nothing wrong with it if you pay for it yourself, which she did. It's whether you expect the National Health Service to pay for it. That's different.
I think that's very different. I mean, I would think that would be totally unacceptable, particularly with the National Health Service in the way that it is at the moment. In fact, I think you'd have no chance, quite frankly, for cosmetic work of that sort. So, yeah, she took out a bank loan. It felt important to her. She's happy to talk about it. And I think for a lot of women, if they thought they could do that to make themselves feel better, you're absolutely right when you say it's related to both self-esteem and confidence, and actually impression management. It's the way that you present yourself to somebody that gives you your confidence, and particularly in a sort of, you know, a public-facing role like Angela Rayner. I think that would have mattered to her a great deal.
It's interesting. I wonder, I mean, where do we draw the line? And I think it's an important line, isn't it, as to where we do things for ourselves and where we're doing things to impress other people. Because there's quite a distinction, isn't there?
It overlaps, yeah. I mean, people aren't always totally aware of why they are doing something. They will often say they are doing it for themselves, but sometimes it may be for other people. I don't know that it matters that much. If you feel it's important to you and it will help your confidence, I mean, they are related, because obviously the way that you present yourself to other people is the way that they will understand you or take you seriously or respond to you. So it's a two-way process. If you feel that you look good you'll present yourself in a certain way, people respond back in a certain way, and so that dialogue goes on. So it's quite hard to decide if it's just for you or just for somebody else. It's probably, or other people, it's probably a blend of the two for most people.
Fascinating. I'm glad she spoke about it, because it will give other people, maybe the self-confidence to either not be ashamed of doing it themselves and to be able to speak about it.
Yeah.
I mean, she hasn't overdone it. It just came up in the interview.
Yeah. Jo, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. It's interesting when you especially when you divide politics from the people, because whatever your politics are, you may not like Angela Rayner's politics or anything else, but I get the impression she's quite a nice person. One northerner to another.
Brought up on a council estate in the north, had her first child at 16.
Yeah. Oh, she did. I mean, she's a grandmother, isn't she?
She's lived, yeah.
But I remember a few years ago I was having some terrible... I kept breaking down on the way to work and things, car trouble, tyre trouble. And I was sat on the M1 for about 6 hours or something. And I must have tweeted about it, been on Twitter. And she replied, sent me a very nice message on Twitter.
What did you tweet about?
About the fact I was broken down on
the M1.
Oh,
I see. And she replied out of the blue.
She wasn't deputy leader at the time. But I just remember thinking, well, actually, isn't that nice? I mean, I don't know if I've ever met her face-to-face, but I just thought, well, that was nice. It was kind. And so I thought, well, that's always stuck with me, actually. I
broke down on Saturday.
Oh, did you?
No, not Saturday. I always get my days wrong. It must have been a Monday or something. I just popped out. I thought, I'll just pop out. It was actually going to the hardware store just to get something for... I'm fitting a curtain rail in one of the upstairs bedrooms. And I thought, I'll just pop out and do that. It'll only take 5 minutes. 5 hours later, I'm still sitting in the car park because for some reason my car absolutely perfectly started, went down to the... parked, everything, got out, everything, got back into the car and it just wouldn't start.
Oh. Isn't that awful?
So I had to wait for a very nice AA man to come out and help, but it took him quite a while to get to me.
So you know a man who can?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, oh dear. Awful, isn't it, when that happens?
Totally disrupted my entire day.
Well, it would do.
Yeah.
It would do. So much for the siesta.
But it was very handy in that the car park I was in, opposite, there was a kebab...
Anne Diamond,
I had
in a kebab.
A mixed vegetable one.
Oh, did you?
Yes. Thank you very much for being there, is all I can say.
Wow.
Oh, and that's the other thing.
Here we go.
No, because you dial into the AA now if you break down on an app, on their app.
Right.
And they say, and that's where the 3-word... This is the first time I've ever used the 3-word. They said, where are you? And they send you the little code thing, so you go on the 3 words thing, and I picked the 3 words, and so they knew exactly where I was. And I thought, well, if I'm going to have to wait a couple of hours at least for the man to come, I'll go back into the store and have a little rootle round and buy a few more things. And when I went into the store, I got a message saying, you have moved from your location. I'd only walked about 500 yards.
Well, it's 3 metre squares on what 3 words?
They said, do you want to cancel? I thought, no, I don't want to cancel. No, I sort of ran back out to the car.
Oh, there
Crazy.
You go. No more shopping for you.
That shows how closely you're being tracked.
Did you go to the kebab shop and leave your car on your phone?
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
Oh, there you go. Clever thinking. Right, we're going to take a short break, but we are back with much more, including all the sport and Aidan in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation, This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
It is 9:36, morning to you. Now, coming up at 10 o'clock this morning, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis will be taking over, and they're welcome to it, with Saturday morning to you.
Morning. Or it should be afternoon for you. You've been up so long.
It feels like afternoon. Yeah. Look, lots going on today. Can we talk about bullying in government? Because these headlines are now surfacing it. Now we're talking about Dominic Raab in the papers today. What's going on?
Well, we will be talking about that. I mean, what went on? I find it hard to believe myself that he was bullying somebody. I mean, he's been in that department from 2015. It took so long for it to come out. So I'm wondering, has he got exacting standards? Is it that civil servants maybe don't want to be in work 5 days a week? Is it that they want to keep the Human Rights Act and he wants to change that? What actually is it? Because it does seem now the easiest thing to say is this person's bullying me and they're out of a job in record time.
Tell you what, politics is not a clean game, is it? Are people being a bit snowflakey?
No, it is a grubby business, isn't it, politics, I guess. But yes, I mean, his latest thing is he was accused of throwing his Pret salad, I don't know, at somebody or at the bin. Or
just the tomatoes.
Just the tomatoes in an aggressive manner. So I think that's the latest accusation.
Sackable.
Yeah, we get a bit sensitive to it, don't we?
Maybe he just doesn't like Pret salad.
I mean, don't get me wrong, if there is proper bullying, of course somebody should go. So if you've got a proper list of things that people have done, and we've seen this now, you saw the Priti Patel issue, you've seen sort of Gavin Williamson, you've seen it sort of ripple along here, but nobody seems to have any concrete information on Dominic Raab. So I think we've got to get that first.
But you can't help wondering whether there's... I mean, you know, people talk about out-of-touch MPs, and I wouldn't throw that to either of you, but you just get... Of course I wouldn't dare.
You've got a pincer movement. There's one either side of you.
Thrown at me. But, you know, you do wonder whether when you've been in government a long time, and when you've been in Parliament a long time, and then maybe even when you are elevated to the position of minister or something, you'd get a bit arrogant and out of touch.
I think, thanks very much. I think it does get difficult. I think now is a difficult time. And what I've always said when I was a minister and a Secretary of State, what you had to do is you came up with the solutions, and I've always got on with my team. They then go out and say, is it possible, is it not, what's the law on it, etc., etc. How do you work with your people? What you don't do is say, I've got to solve this problem. You solve it and come back to me. That's not what you do. You solve it and ask them, who are diligent human beings, to come back with you to, is it possible, if it's not? So I think this could be maybe part of the problem there as we're getting into a more complicated age.
Meanwhile, all of this, none of this helps the abuse that MPs are getting on Twitter now. I know people are losing patience with politics, well, it's been going on for a long time. But actually, this abuse is terrible, actually, and so unnecessary.
Yeah, well, the BBC did a survey where they monitored 3 million tweets that had gone to MPs over a 6-week period, and over 130,000 of them were what they described as toxic. So we're going to be speaking to Naz Shah, who's the Labour MP for Bradford West, my neighbouring MP in Bradford, who receives more than most. I mean, in this period, I received 1,250 toxic tweets in this 6-week period that they monitored.
1,249 from me.
Naz Shah got 5,000 in that same period of time. And partly because she's a woman, partly because she's from an ethnic minority. I think they're factors that are part of these high numbers. So anyway, we're speaking to her about that. But yeah, the level of abuse of MPs. I mean, I've got a very little time for many MPs myself, but the abuse is just, it's.
So why be on Twitter at all? Is it important for an MP?
Well, look, I don't tweet. I am on Twitter, but I don't tweet. I'm only there as a public service so that people can hurl abuse at me, to be perfectly honest. But, yeah, I mean, social media, I think, is the worst thing that's happened to politics, to be honest. Not just because of the abuse, but you can't have a sensible conversation about anything. You can't have a nuanced debate in, 100-odd characters and all the rest of it. So
I have to say, an awful lot of members sit in the Commons just constantly on their phones, presumably tweeting all the time.
Yeah. Yes. I wonder if Twitter's becoming less relevant. I think particularly so now Musk has it, and he's now saying it could even be turned into a bank. But for a while, you do have to get your message to your constituents. It was getting more and more complicated. Yes, you see them. Yes, you write in your local paper. Yes, you go on TV. So you are using every medium. I use it, but I don't read all the abusive...
No, don't engage.
No, don't engage, because, it does eat you from the inside out. I mean, they are so hurtful, you're best just not to read them.
They forget you're human beings, don't they? I mean, the same with abusive stuff that we get. You say, they forget you're just a human being at the end of the day.
Not a punch bag.
Yeah. Now, we like our technology, but we're not sure about VR, or this VR headset you're going to be talking about. What on earth is this about?
Well, this is a most unusual headset. It is a virtual reality game, not quite completed yet, this headset, but what it would do as you were playing the game, to raise the stakes, if you died in the game, you would be killed through the headset. Now, when I heard this, I thought, I cannot believe this. It was sick, ludicrous. So I looked into it. Palmer Luckey is the chap who's invented it, a sort of known across the globe with headsets, and this is his ultimate game. It's been inspired by an online novel, but it's the ultimate game. What is worse, they're also making the technology you could not remove the headset once you'd started the game. You can't even think it was a mistake. This is, to me, like a Russian roulette. It's horrendous.
But how, in anyone's...
How could you make it? How could you distribute it? How could you advertise it? It is wrong.
It has to be an illegal thing.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's like something out of Spooks, isn't it? It's something that you'd expect to see in an episode of Spooks that the sort of foreign government had invented to kill somebody.
But you know what will happen with this, if it ever made it, is it's the kids and the teenagers who think they're indestructible, the ones who hang off skyscrapers and all the rest of it, think, we'll do that, this is the ultimate challenge, we'll do it. Of course, everyone loses on the games eventually.
But it is like some horrific sci-fi movie, isn't it? Your Blade Runners or your, those ultimate
Do you know
games.
what? There's a show out right now on Amazon Prime called The Peripheral, which is exactly this. I've just started watching, actually.
You're not going to get those headsets, are you?
It's very good. It's a very good show. It's only just been launched, but it's...
A show is one thing.
Yeah, but this
to be doing it in real life is horrendous.
Crackers. Don't. He's not going to bring one in, is he?
Well, I'm not wearing one.
Don't put one on.
Try it. Don't get talked into it.
You want to slip one on in later on.
Yeah, while he's asleep.
While he's asleep. Yeah,
No, I tell you what, you two, you want to slide out of the studio now. Just slide and go and get ready for your own show.
Yes.
We're going to talk about
you know
Matt
who.
Hancock.
Oh yes.
I'm so sorry.
I think we'll leave at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd like to. Yeah. And I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, because all of the fans that watch it have been voting him in and to keep doing these awful bush tucker trials, whatever they have to do.
Yes, but it was the
as a way of punishing him, really.
Yes, so Matt Hancock and Boy George were taking part in this eating trial. Mr Hancock's appearance, of course, causing mixed reactions. Mixed reactions last night when he was eating the private parts of various animals. I mean, how's that entertainment?
I do
not know.
Don't know.
Anyway, let's talk to TV behavioural expert Darren Stanton, who joins us now. Darren, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
What's your understanding of how the contestants, I mean, particularly Matt Hancock in a way, are getting on with all these challenges and things?
Well, first of all, I was absolutely gobsmacked when it was first announced that Matt Hancock was going in. But as somebody that, is a communications expert, he's providing a lot of material. I don't think, obviously, like the general public, he was too well received. There's certainly something in psychology called a micro-expression. And this is when someone leaks the real emotion. So even though someone can say, it's really I'm pleased to meet you, they sort of flash this expression of disgust by crinkling the nose. And we saw that with Mike Tindall. So I think he's kind of playing things close to his chest. But I could tell from the outset that certainly Boy George and Mike Tindall are not big fans. But again, Boy George is obviously a lot more vocal than Mike Tindall at the moment.
I mean, at the moment, Matt Hancock is trying his best, and he's done quite well, actually, even though what he was put through last night, is it? The other night? It's all on the front pages today, was absolutely ghastly. And, of course, the newspapers are all showing big pictures of him grimacing at the various things he's had to do and eat and be otherwise humiliated. How do you feel he's doing? I mean, his body language is showing, what, sheer guts or sheer fright?
Yeah, I mean, if we take the politics out of the equation, I mean, he's actually doing really well. I mean, he got 11. I think he really tried to excel himself in that particular trial. And they all said, get at least 6. So I think he obviously went back with 11. He was quite chuffed with himself. And I think the fact that the group, ate well that night, that kind of gave him a little bit of kudos in the group. It's going to be really interesting to see how things develop, over the next sort of few days. But I do think you're right, Anne, that the general public are really using this as a means of retribution for being a lockdown. It seems he's going to spend a lot of time eating, lots of unmentionable animals.
Yeah, what do you make of it? I mean, it's a very odd thing for human beings to do, isn't it? To sort of, I mean, I know it's put out there for a format, so why not? But to be voting in to sort of punish somebody, if you like. I mean, it all sounds very basic.
It's very sadistic, and the thing about it is, it's almost like trolls. I mean, I don't think I'm particularly sort of a target, but I get a lot of trolls myself, and you actually have to accept that if you put your face on television, then you're going to get that. But yeah, for some reason, it all stems back to anonymity. People that want to be kind of cruel or sadistic, or people will probably say things to you guys or politicians online or Twitter. They'd never do that in a million years if they were face to face. So a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're anonymous. They feel they can't be traced, and that has a lot to do with it.
And where do you think TV is going from this point of view? Because, other reality TV shows have come and gone, but I'm a Celebrity has stuck around for a long time now. It's a good format. Do you think it will continue?
I think it will. I mean, obviously, we're now seeing the re-emergence of Big Brother next year, aren't we? So, that ran for, many, many years. So I think people just love that voyeurism. They just love to watch other people in distress, which is frightening, really. But I do think it's got quite a number of years to go, if I'm honest with you.
Oh, well, we shall see. Darren, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Guys, have a great day.
Yeah, and you.
We won't get me watching it, I can tell you.
No, I can't. I'm wary of saying it because obviously it's got huge audiences. Loads of you probably like it. I just do find it a bit basic, the idea that you want to watch people do horrible things. I don't see where the entertainment value is in that.
Nor do I, but it is an incredibly successful format for ITV, God bless them.
God bless them.
Yeah.
But as for, Big Brother and things as well, Martha, but you did the celebrity one.
I did the second year of Celebrity Big Brother, yeah.
Was it as horrific as it looks?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And that was in the days when lasting 6 days was really good. It was only meant to be a week long. And also we did it for comic relief.
Yeah.
So you had that. At least you felt that you were earning some money for comic relief. No, there was no wages in it at all. And then now it is a bit galling that people go in it for £500,000 or something. Yeah. I did it for charity.
We'll have to get back in, Anne.
No way ever.
£500,000 each.
No
what do you reckon?
Ever. But you'd be expected to do about 5 or 6 weeks now for that.
Oh, would you?
You have to give up the rest of your life. It is ritual humiliation, though nothing like having to eat bugs or anything. But it is the sheer awfulness of knowing that it is your responsibility to earn enough points or whatever in whatever silly challenge they set you in the evening, so that your teammates can eat. Yeah, that is a lot of stress, I can tell you.
Yeah, it's very odd, isn't it? OK, let's move on to the sport, should we? Because it's been heartbreak for England. The Red Roses have lost the Rugby World Cup to the Black Ferns in New Zealand. Went down to the wire, apparently. Let's talk to... Have we got it ready? I don't know what's happening. Oh, Aidan's here. Before we talk to Giselle Mather.
I'll have to do.
We'll have to do. What do you make of it?
Look, a huge disappointment. I mean, it'll be talked about how far women's rugby has come. That's great. We know that. That's taken as read. But that's a huge disappointment in terms of what happened in the match play, because England were 14-0 up. The game turned on the red card. Now, I maintain, and I will maintain, that England would have won that game comfortably had it not been for the red card. That was Lydia Thompson. It was a clash of heads. New Zealand didn't come out of it particularly well, either, that particular incident, because they lost arguably the best player.
What was the score again? How close was it?
31-29. So they led at half-time, 26-19. It was 14-0 when the red card happened. I'm convinced, given that England had won their previous 30 matches, yes, OK, they'd lost. It was their 5th final they've lost to New Zealand. New Zealand are in terms of pedigree, historically, they've won, I think that's now 7 World Cups they've won now. England have won 2. One of those was in 1994. So it was a chance to pull back this one. The key thing has been professionalism. I mean, England have been professional now for 3.5 years, whereas New Zealand only officially went professional in February of this year. But it definitely turned on the red card. Now, that says something for the quality of the competition as well, because we're used to seeing that in elite sport, where just something like that happens and it turns the course of the game. Nonetheless, talking more widely about what it's done for women's rugby, it really has been outstanding. That was a really good quality contest we saw.
Well, let's see how things have changed, should we? We can talk to 1994 World Cup winner, Giselle Mather, who joins us. Really good to see you this morning. I know you must be disappointed, like a lot of people are, with the final result, but nevertheless, as Aidan was saying, a really good quality match play there.
It was an extraordinary game of women's rugby, absolutely extraordinary, matching the 2 semi-finals that took place last weekend. We've seen more happen in this game and around this game. You could write a book about what actually happened in this game, and what the players had to cope with while they were out there. The red card, clearly, as Aidan's just alluded to, is massively significant. To play 60 minutes without one of your major attacking threats is huge, especially against New Zealand, who are the best side in the world at unstructured play in the women's game. But also 40,000 people watching the game at Eden Park. Not many of them cheering on England, so that would have been a new experience for the girls as well. They lost Leanne Riley last night, which is our 9. They lost her in the captain's run yesterday. That's huge and significant. So we're talking about...
Oh dear, we may be losing the line slightly, Giselle. We'll try once more. I mean, we've just been seeing the crowds that we're trying to get in to watch it with you. You're watching from Twickenham. I can see traces of champagne glasses in the background and things like that. What was the atmosphere like, just to watch it?
I'm at the Cabbage Patch pub in Twickenham, which is the most one of the most famous rugby pubs in the world. It was packed, absolutely packed. There were people queuing at 6 o'clock in the morning, 200 people outside queuing to get in. The atmosphere was extraordinary, and that. What the players, particularly in the last two semi-finals and finals, have produced has again added to what I call the women's sport revolution. In that our Lionesses winning, our England players, 30 unbeaten games. Okay, they haven't got over the line by 3 points today. Our hockey players winning the Commonwealth gold. Women's sport is well and truly on the map in this country, and young girls at school who are sporty and love it can see a pathway for themselves now, which when I started playing the game just wasn't there. So that's extraordinary, and people are realising that watching these games, we put on a phenomenal product, and getting up at 6 o'clock this morning was well and truly worth it.
Yeah. Giselle, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. 4 points in it. It's not a lot.
That's nothing, is it?
Not a lot. But
never mind, we did very well. There'll be a lot of little girls going out to play rugby, probably, or football this afternoon, who will be inspired.
Nothing wrong with that. Now, don't go anywhere. We're back tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, but Esther and Phil are up next with Saturday Morning.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. The weekend has started mild and it will continue that way. Not as windy out there today compared to the last couple of days, and there is some fog around, dense fog in a few spots too. This is the big picture: high pressure to the east, low to the west, and we're kind of in between, with this weather front straddling across central areas, pushing northwards through the day. So a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern and central Scotland, but that rain is going to edge its way clear. There is some fog around that may take a few hours to clear, and for some it could just stay grey all day, particularly parts of northeast England and northern Scotland. But for most of us, it is going to brighten up through the day, and we'll see some spells of sunshine. Still a bit breezy in the west, but not as windy as yesterday. It is still very mild. With a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting up into the high teens, perhaps, even where it's grey. We'll see temperatures into the teens. This evening, it stays largely dry and fine, but it could turn quite misty again quite quickly, especially over central and eastern parts of England. Some dense patches of fog are possible that, again, could linger for much of Sunday. Still a bit breezy in the west, keeping skies a little clear here, and again, for most, it is going to be a very mild night, with most towns and cities staying in double digits. The details for Sunday, well, again, likely to start pretty drab, misty, murky, even foggy. That mist and fog will take a while to clear over eastern counties of England. Some will stay gloomy all day. Further west, a weather front will eventually bring some rain into the west of Northern Ireland, although I suspect Belfast will stay dry until dusk. Elsewhere tomorrow, most places, again, seeing some sunny spells, and it is going to be mild, even where it's cloudy, 13 or 14, with some sunshine. Temperatures, again, getting into the high teens.